Nigeria, we hail thee, our own dear native land. Though tribe and tongue may differ, in brotherhood we stand. Nigerians old and proud to serve our sovereign motherland. Our flag shall be a symbol that truth and justice reign. In peace all battle honored, and this we count as gain. To hand unto our children a banner without stain. O God of all creation, grant this our one request. Help us to build a nation where no man is oppressed, and so with peace and plenty Nigeria may be blessed.
Holdings, Open Access Data Center Limited, as well as Zoho. Your commitment to excellence and your belief in the power of collaborative dialogue have helped us to make this event possible. Today, we are creating a platform that not only addresses the current economic landscape, but also shapes the future of business and leadership in Nigeria. To all of our participants, whether you are here physically or you are part of the many thousands that are watching our proceedings online this morning, we believe that your joining us signifies your dedication to continuous learning and improvement. We have an exciting agenda with a great array of speakers, panelists, and we have also arranged ample opportunity for networking sessions designed to provide you with invaluable insights and practical strategies helping your leadership capabilities. Before concluding, ladies and gentlemen, let me update you with some important developments in the work that we do at Business Day. Since our last convening in 2023, Business Day has launched a very interesting program called Policy Intervention Series, under which we are able to bring regulators and policymakers in government, as well as business leaders, into the same room to sit down and just explore and understand the challenges that business leaders face with the hope that we can resolve them. We are indeed very excited by the very warm welcome that this initiative has received. We have also established a full-fledged research and data analytics arm to better harness the pile of data which we routinely gather and engage with on a daily basis. We have also launched the Business Day Center for Social and Economic Development, a foundation to help our journalists to better play their social service to society and to be sure that they are able to make impact seamlessly. And finally, only recently, we at Business Day received a television license from the federal government of Nigeria. As we begin or continue in this very exciting journey, I urge all of you to continue to be partners with us on this noble adventure. Today, we expect that you will be fully engaged, that you will be able to share your experiences, you'll be able to build new relationships that I believe will help to propel you and your business into the years that lie ahead. Once again, I welcome you to the Business Day CEO Forum 2024. Let us make this an unforgettable experience filled with inspiration, innovation, and impactful conversation. I thank you very much for coming.
Thank you very much, Mr. Agbogun, publisher of Business Day, and congratulations on the receipt of the license for a TV station. Ladies and gentlemen, the next item on the program is a presentation by one of the big four consulting companies in Nigeria, PricewaterhouseCoopers. The theme is Thriving in an Age of Continuous Reinvention. And this will be done by the country's senior partner, PwC Nigeria, and regional senior partner for West Market, Mr. Sam Abu. Please put your hands together for Sam as he comes to do the presentation. And I ask that we kindly take notes as he makes his presentation so that we can go home with that. Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome. Let me add my welcome to Frank's welcome. Welcome to the CEO Forum for 2024. There's a very old Chinese proverb that says, "May you live in interesting times." And I think I speak for everyone when I say I think we are all living in interesting times at the moment. I want to talk about thriving in the age of continuous reinvention. And I think that aligns very closely to the thematic areas that had been shared earlier by the MCs. Every year at PwC, we conduct a global CEO survey. And in that survey, we ask CEOs from across the world what matters to them as CEOs, what risks they face, what challenges they face in their business, in their operating environments, and what strategies they deploy or are considering to address those challenges and those risks. So we had one for last year. We just released the outcome of that survey, and for many of you, you would have seen a small booklet that we've shared that has an excerpt that relates specifically to West Africa. And it's very good reading, and it has plenty of information that you'll find very useful. What am I going to cover? Talk about the outline, the context for this conversation, the imperative for reinventing your businesses as CEOs or as small businesses or in whatever capacity you operate in your organization. We're also going to look at the reinvention playbook. What should you be thinking about as you reinvent your business? And we'll conclude. As I said, we live in interesting times. We operate in every single company, whether you're in Nigeria or anywhere in the world, you're subject to what we call the 5 significant mega trends. And these mega trends is affecting communities, societies, businesses, individuals in very significant ways. Firstly, there's climate change. That needs no introduction. Everyone understands how climate change is affecting our businesses, affecting our communities. In Nigeria, for instance, we are all too aware of what happens every single year, whether it's flooding in Lagos, drought in the Middle Belt, desertification up north. Our lives are being impacted significantly by climate change. And if you go on further, there's technology disruption. Perhaps in the last 2 years, there has been more technology disruption in our lives and coming down the pike than we have experienced maybe in the previous 20 years. Artificial intelligence has come to stay. It is now a feature of many business strategies, and it is not something that you can ignore. Demographic shifts, population shifts, demographics are changing across the world. In Nigeria, we have a youthful population. In other parts of the world, the population is aging. This has significant implications for consumer patterns, for how you deploy your strategies to meet consumer demands and consumer needs. It also has implications for how do we fund pensions for aging populations, and for countries like Nigeria, how do we put our youthful population to work to increase our productive capacity. Fracturing worlds. As we speak right now, there are perhaps 3 or 4 major conflicts across the world. The Russia-Ukraine crisis or war is well into its 3rd year. There is a crisis in the Middle East. We have closer to home in Africa, we perhaps have 2 or 3 significant civil wars that are happening. There's Sudan, there's DRC. And even if you step away from wars and conflicts, the division and divisiveness that is a part of our everyday lives is all too obvious. Elections in the US, elections in Europe, in the UK, we are continuing to be a very deeply divided world. And that has significant implications for you as CEOs as you conduct your businesses. All of this lead to increasing social instability. And social instability, it doesn't matter where you are. Whether you're in Nairobi, for those of you who have been reading the news, you saw what happened in Nairobi, or in Lagos, or the US, or the UK. Social instability is now a fact of life because of the increasing disparity, firstly, in communities between the rich and the poor, but even more broadly, the disparity between rich countries and poor countries. And that continues to fuel some of the challenges that we face in this part of the world. In Nigeria, we're 1 year into the current government, and there have been considerable reforms underway. A lot has happened. I wouldn't spend too much on this slide. We all know the impact of subsidy removal, debt restructuring, the deregulation of the FX market, and all of those industrial reforms that the government that are currently underway, with varying degrees of success. We can debate how successful they are, how adequate they are, but there are reforms underway. And for you as CEOs, it is critical that you understand what this means for your business and what strategies you need to consider in order to take advantage of whatever changes or transformations exist within that system. Moving on very quickly, our survey indicates that these are the things that CEOs are concerned about. And you see that this is very closely aligned to the 5 mega trends that I talked about. We've got technology there, we have economic issues in Nigeria, in this part of the world, inflation, interest rates, FX volatility are a clear and present risk to many of our business, to many of your business, and I'm sure you understand that. Climate change, business model viability, which I'll talk to in a little bit more, and health and social inequalities. Health and social inequalities and the impact it has on our workforce is a significant challenge for many of our CEOs. Many CEOs tell us that the most significant challenge they face in this part of the world is, do I have the talent to help me meet my objectives as a business? The Japa syndrome or Japa phenomenon is unabating, and it continues to place significant strain on our business's ability to be successful. What are CEOs doing? What do they think? CEOs think that 51% of the 4,000 CEOs we surveyed across the world believe that there will be a downturn in the economy in the next 1 year. And I think that is fairly reflective of what our Nigerian respondents, our West African respondents said as well. They think that they are short-term pessimistic, long-term optimistic, but they think in the next 1 year there will be significant downturn in the economy, perhaps before things start to turn around. And 45% of CEOs doubt the abilities of their companies to be viable within the next decade, continuing the way they are continuing. That means many CEOs think that if we continue to do business the way we do it now, we will not have a business, we will not be in business in 10 years. And I think that is a very strong and resounding case for business model reinvention. You need to rethink your business, you need to think about what you do to transform your current business. And what are CEOs doing? These are some of the strategies that CEOs are adopting across the world. And you do well to consider what you need to do here to make your business viable in the short term and in the long term. Technology, adopting new technologies to enhance your competitive advantage. You cannot ignore technology. You will not be successful if you're not thinking very strategically about technology, about digitization, about artificial intelligence, and how you can deploy technology into your business to make you more competitive, to make you meet your customers where they are, and to make you sell your products better. Technology is key. Developing new products and services, rethinking your business model around what your products should be, what your services should be, what industry you should be in. Frank said, and I see Frank said now that they just got a TV license. That is an example of business model reinvention. How do I expand my products and my services? And those are some of the things that CEOs are thinking about. Forming new strategic partnerships, implementing new pricing models. If you're pouring at 30% in Nigeria, you need a new pricing model, I dare say. If you have, if you're importing at 1,500 or whatever to the naira to the dollar, you need a new pricing strategy. So you've got to rethink what your pricing model is and how you can make that work for you. The last one there is shift from a global supply chain to a regional supply chain. And I think that is quite obvious. We're extremely import dependent in Nigeria. So if you're in the manufacturing sector, and we've seen what that has meant for many companies in the last year, where companies have closed up shop or have left Nigeria. What that means is that you've got to rethink, what are my sources? What's my supply chain? Do I really have to import? And we're seeing many companies in this part of the world beginning to consider local sourcing for their production and for their manufacturing infrastructure. It is hard work, but it is something that has to be done. Four critical things to consider. One, transform your workforce. These are the strategies that you must think about. You must transform your workforce. Enable, empower, train your people. And to do this, you need to, I dare say, I want to amplify the message, you can't be successful without deploying technology. You are not going to be able to replace everybody who leaves your company with another person. Sometimes you need to just enable your technology, think about how you can automate and digitize, and make your current workforce be digitally abled. That is how you're going to be able to address that. You've got to, workforce transformation is critical. Number two, redefine your strategic choices. What is important? Where is the value? Many CEOs that we survey talk about internal red tape. You are trapped. Many CEOs and many companies are victims of their own historical success. What worked in the past is not going to work anymore. What is value? Where does value lie now? What do customers want? And are you ready to meet customers where they are? Number three, sustainability, climate change. If you do not have a sustainability strategy, then you're not ready for the future. You simply are not. It is not only a good thing to do for our societies, for our communities, it's a good thing to do for your business. More and more investors, financiers, for instance, are asking for your sustainable practice strategy. You will not be able to access funds if you don't have a sustainability strategy. Your cost of funds might be higher simply because you don't have a sustainability strategy. If you think about Nigeria, if you're not thinking about energy efficiency, thinking about how you can control, contain your carbon footprint, then you're not thinking about the contract, you're not thinking about your business. So sustainability is critical. And lastly, innovate. You have to learn, innovate, do things differently. The demography is changing. What your customer needs are changing. In this age of technology, what your customer wanted last year or 2 years ago is not what he wants today. So you've got to always learn, think about what customers need, what the trends are, and collaborate to make sure that you are able to meet customers where they are at. In conclusion, one, the Nigerian macroeconomic environment is changing. It is dynamic. It is challenging. I want to expand that and say it's not Nigeria. Everywhere across the world, That is the reality of businesses. 2, those challenges require you to rethink your business. What worked in the past is not necessarily going to work today, and therefore you've got to rethink you have to do what we call business model reinvention. Rethink your business model. Is it still applicable? And those changes, those challenges that exist everywhere are opportunities for growth and opportunities for you to adopt new strategies. And many CEOs in this room are already doing that. Many CEOs in this country, across the world, are already tackling those challenges, exploring those opportunities. Do not be left behind. Thank you.
Let's put our hands together once again for Sam Abu, Country Director, Country Senior Partner, PwC Nigeria. Thank you so very much for giving us that presentation and setting the tone for today. We really appreciate your insights, and thank you for talking about what it means to thrive in an age of continuous reinvention. Let's put our hands together for him once again. I'm very excited for this next session. It's entitled Adaptive Strategies Leading Through Economic Challenges. Let's put our hands together for the moderator, Kemi Ajumobi, who is the Associate Editor at Business Day Media, the editor of the Inspiring Women's series, and also Women's Hub at Business Day. She's essentially the Minister of Women's Affairs at Business Day. So let's put our hands together for Kemi Ajumobi. Let's do better than that. Let's encourage her. Very excited about this panel session, and all the best.
It's looking like Lily has given me another job. Good morning, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I'm actually excited about this particular panel. Anyone who knows me knows that I breathe, live, talk, and always excited about things that have to do with women. And it's not because of the gender. For me, it's usually mostly because of the agenda. Because beyond being a woman, you certainly must have an agenda, which you want people to know you for, not just because you're female. So to every woman in the room, please put your hands together for yourself and celebrate the amazing person that you are. The men can clap for us, so it's okay. It's okay. When you get home, you explain why you didn't clap for us. The theme for the panel says, Adaptive Strategies Leading Through Economic Challenges. I'll be calling the fantastic women, I'm actually excited about this panel, who will be, I think I should sit here, answering the questions that were set for them. My first panelist is an amazing woman who is outstanding at her organization to the extent that she's at the top of her organization. She is working for the bank that's ensuring that import and export is done well and that investors are concerned about doing things with our country. Please put your hands together for Stella Okotete, the Executive Director, Business Development, Nigeria Export and Import Bank, Nexon. If you're clapping for her, maybe we should just do it well. Okay, I think I should sit here. Thank you very much. I think I should still stand. The next person I'm going to call is somebody who, I say she's a doyen of the tech world. And she used to work for a company that is just a click away. But beyond that, she has now gone beyond limits to become the CEO of Beyond Limits. This tease is very, very, Ladies and gentlemen, you've seen her on your screen, you've heard her somewhere, or you have seen her somewhere that you didn't think she would be, but then she came and then she broke the tables for everybody to learn. Put your hands together for Juliet Ehimwa. I hope I called that well. If you're clapping for her, please do it well. She is the CEO of Beyond Limits. and the former director, Google West Africa. The Google effect, beyond limits. All right, how many of you have watched Funmilayo Ransom Kuti? Has anybody watched it? If you haven't, go and sin no more. That's a beautiful piece. And our speaker on this panel is someone who is a multi-award winning film director. Emphasis on multi-award winning. And producer. She is the founder and CEO of Terra Culture. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for this woman that is doing us proud, even on the global scene. Bolanle Austin Peters. You see, we are in the spirits. She's wearing pink, I'm wearing pink. This panel is going to be hot. Please keep clapping. They do honor her abroad. Let's do it well at home. It looks like we planned it. Yeah. Yes, please. We have a woman at the helm of affairs at the Federal Airport Authority of Nigeria, and that's a good thing. She is the MD, and her name is Olubunmi Oluwaseun Kuku. Please put your hands together for her. I think she's joining us online. Yes, please. Our last speaker is also joining us online. I mean, she's had amazing events around the world, even in Nigeria. I've been at one of her programs before to, do what I love to do outside my official work. And she's an amazing, amazing woman. She's the co-founder of Zigma, and her name is Fumi Ogbue. Please put your hands together for her. All right, question time. This feels like WAEC, but it's not. And what I like to do is to let my panelists know that you're going to be speaking from your heart, and you're not confined to saying what you don't want to say. So please feel free to express yourself exactly the way you want to. So thank you so much. The theme says adaptive strategies leading through economic challenges. My first question is for Madam Stella Kotete. Looking at the rise of female CEOs in Nigeria, how is this, in your opinion, impacting the statistics of women in leadership roles and inclusion? Also, have we moved the dial, or is corporate Nigeria becoming more inclusive and empowering female professionals? I would like you to answer that for us. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'll say yes, we're improving, because today Nigeria currently has about 10 female CEOs of our Nigerian banks, and we have double the number as executive directors, and heading also some of the very critical departments or divisions within the corporate space. So yes, we're improving, but there's still room for more women, because if you look at the financial sector currently today, the women leading most of our banks are actually repositioning the banks with new innovative ideas, bringing in new risks mitigating strategies to help support businesses, in this tough time. I'll tell you that we can get more women to sit on the table, because the table is big enough to carry and entertain what we have to offer. You asked another question as regards what the future holds for our women. The future is very bright. We just need to encourage our younger women to navigate the storms better than we did. And I'm still very young, so we're also looking forward to having a more robust platform where we'll be able to show our worth, because we face a whole lot of things, The corporate world is really tough. And when you have to juggle between family, the workspace, and the hurdles you meet within the work ecosystem, you would know that what we need more as women is just to be more collaborative. We need that partnership between ourselves. We need more women network. I was happy I met someone here today who is supporting career women. So we tell our stories, we learn from our stories, and I'm sure in no short time, with due respect to the men, would have women, running the economy of our country. And I've said it, we've shown our worth. Remember when we had inflation, depression in the economy of Nigeria, we had female ministers who were able, to turn the wheel and got us, to a more safer space. I'm sure if we have more of those women today in our economy, we'll be able to navigate better and deal with all the FS issues we are having.
All those in support say yay. All those in support say yay. The yays have it. The question I have for our amazing speaker, who I said is just a click away, what strategies is your organization adopting to navigate economic uncertainties? Juliet Ehimwan. Yes, it is. I think
Better? Okay, great. Thank you so much. So I'm wearing multiple hats today. I serve on the board of a few commercial organizations, particularly in the finance sector, FMCG, and oil and gas, as well as running my own organization. And so I'll be responding from multiple vantage points. I think one thing that is consistent across board is the fact that every organization, in one way or the other, is experiencing the economic challenges that we talk about. Say, for example, in FMCG, where you have an inflationary environment, consumer purchasing power is limited. And so, we've seen challenges around maintaining the same level of profitability that we've had on a year-on-year basis. Or in an oil and gas sector where you're looking to expand, with climate change and conversations around divestment from fossil fuels, etc. And when you consider the fact that interest rates in the country are at an all-time high, about 30%, across the world as well, there are, it's more challenging getting the required funding. And so these are things that affect everyone in some shape or form. And I would say that collectively, there are 5 things that have been shown to just really help navigate the challenges. One is cost optimization. When we're talking about resilience, we're looking at staying strong amidst the challenges, keeping the business afloat, and even profitable. Now, where you have dwindling revenues, we need to think about costs. And adopting cost optimization practices, looking at reducing waste, removing redundancies, streamlining processes, and this is where technology can really play a very important role. We've seen some organizations adopt ERP systems, enterprise resource planning tools. Most organizations have at least 7 different functions, from sales to marketing to business development, operations, etc. And when you have these functions in silos, replicating systems, etc., you have inefficiencies within the organizations. But looking at business integration, using ERP platforms, for example, so that you're able to streamline workflows, streamline tasks, and so that management can have a single source of truth. As a leader, you're able to, at the click of a button, get a good view of how your business is doing, every aspect of the business. That helps us to understand where is the wastage happening. What are the products that we need to sunset? Perhaps because when you look at the cost and return dynamics, they're not very favorable. And where are our cash cows, etc.? Where are the inefficiencies within the business so that we can use that data to make more informed decisions that can help the business navigate the challenges. And the second thing, quite linked to that, is just adaptability and agility. It's so important that we're able to respond fast because we are, it's been described as a VUCA world. It's volatile, it's complex, it's uncertain, it's ambiguous, etc. We need to be able to respond very quickly. And so having this data at our fingertips just really helps us to pivot when necessary and to be flexible enough within the organization to make those necessary transitions. The third thing I would say is digital transformation, which underpins all of this. Digital transformation has been an imperative for a while now, actually. In fact, if this is not something that is top line in your business today, then you're missing the boat. You're behind, because we're not even talking about digital transformation anymore. We're talking about AI-enabled businesses. So digital transformation is really a must-have for any business. Looking at leveraging cloud computing, artificial intelligence tools, CRM tools to help us better understand our customers, understand the market dynamics, understand changing consumer behaviors and preferences, helping us to adequately target the relevant addressable market for our products and services, and just really understand and respond to trends. The fourth one I would say is diversification. One of the things that we observed during the pandemic, I know this is an extreme example, but some supply chains completely broke down, completely. And so making sure that we're reducing our reliance and dependence on specific suppliers, specific markets, and just really diversifying, looking at innovative models, this is really important. And the final thing, of course, is people, because no business exists without people. As we're transforming, as we are optimizing, we need to carry our employees along. We need to also remember that the business is facing challenges, but our employees are also in the same environment. And so individually, they're also experiencing these challenges. They're also impacted by inflation, etc. And we need them to be able to ride the wave. They are closer to the customer in many cases. They are more in touch with the pulse on the ground. They're in the field. And so we should make sure that we're training, we're building capacity, and we are prioritizing employee well-being as much as possible. So these are five things across board that we've seen to be quite effective and important.
Thank you. That was that was really deep. My question for you, Bolanle Austin Peters, before I ask the question, you're in an industry where if you know the work, it will show. If you do not know the work, it will show. But somehow you have consistently shown that it can be done and it can be done well. So here's me giving you your flowers first before I ask you your question. Now, the core of movie production is money. No matter how talented the actor is, if there's no money, it may not be able to flow. No matter how loyal the person is to you, you still have to pay. How confident are you about your company's prospects for revenue growth over the next 12 months or 3 years? And what are the factors contributing to your optimism or your caution?
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. So like Juliet mentioned earlier, I wear a lot of hats. So as a movie director and producer, as a board member of many other companies that are not in this space, and as a lawyer. And all these experiences have contributed to my work and to the journey that I sort of like pursued over the last 21 years. And the search for excellence, I think, is what has driven us to where we are today as TerraCulture. And I think the story starts with my general observation of the way things are done in Nigeria. Even as a Nigerian, the acceptance of some level of mediocrity is generally okay. And I struggled with this for a long time. And the reason why I came into the art space was because of this. A lot of us used to criticize, and we still criticize, the arts coming out of Nigeria. We criticize for a long time, my friends. We will criticize the theatrical space. Oh my goodness, this is horrible. Why is the costume like this, etc., etc. And the same went for the movie space for a long time. A lot of us would not consume Nigerian content. And I asked myself, why don't we contribute to this space ourselves instead of constantly criticizing, knowing the capacity that this industry has to transform Nigeria's reputation and also to create jobs in Nigeria. So when I stepped into this place, I started with theater. And it started with somebody nudging me and saying, this is terrible about somebody else's product. So I started studying theater. I do a lot of shows when I travel, and I've grown up with going to theater a lot in Nigeria and abroad. And every time I travel and I look at a production abroad and I ask myself, why can't we achieve the same level of excellence in Nigeria? As a matter of fact, I got a call from someone very high up in government 2 days ago that they saw something in Belarus and they would like for us to do something similar in Nigeria. Now, going to the point that you made, there are certain things you cannot do if you're not funded adequately. So when people want the excellence of Hollywood and corporate Nigeria and philanthropists and private individuals sit down and do not invest in that space, you cannot get that quality. It will never happen. So we can keep theorizing, we can keep criticizing, and we can keep mouthing without doing anything. Change will never happen. So when I got into that space, I was committed to change. And I looked at theater. I think that we have contributed significantly to the growth of theater in Nigeria, musical theater in particular. We changed the look, we changed the feel, and we changed the acceptance. I can say confidently that out of maybe 10 musical companies that you have in Nigeria today, they all came out of terror culture. And it is because we were just committed. You have to have that passion and that zeal. People ask me what drives you, and it's this, all that drives me is the fact that I know it's doable. The talent is there, but the support is just not there. Corporate Nigeria doesn't support, philanthropists don't support, but we all enjoy good things when we go outside of Nigeria. So what we have done is we have shown people it is doable. At Christmas, at Easter, we're sold out. So imagine replicating this across Nigeria. Imagine if we had 1,000 theaters in Nigeria or 200,000 theaters in Nigeria. I was in China, and some Chinese guys would say, oh, we'd like to do business with you, we'd like to do VFX in Nigeria, and I said, brilliant. So they sat and asked me, what is the turnover of an average Nigerian film? So Formula was considered a huge success, or the biggest, highest grossing biopic in Nigeria. Funke Akindele's movie, the highest grossing film in Nigeria. But when you do the math, it's pittance, it's peanuts. We're talking $100,000, $200,000, $1 million gross for a film. Now look at this. When the Chinese guys asked me, what is your turnover? And I said, oh yeah, well, you know, the revenue, when we're done, we take home about $200,000. I just saw their jaws drop. Because the guys were like, we do $10 million per movie, minimum. They have close to 100,000 screens in China. 100,000. We have 300 screens in Nigeria. How am I going to make the money? How does that even make sense? But this is the conundrum. All our young children want to be in this space. And we're not providing the infrastructure, we're not providing the training, we're not providing the wherewithal for them to get it right, and we expect a change. Nothing is going to happen for as long as we all keep looking at certain areas and turning a blind eye to the realities before us, which is that this is where the future is. Nigeria is predominantly young. The young people are not particularly interested in old curriculum. Their look and feel and their taste for the future is evidenced in the kind of things that they do. They want to be involved in music, in arts, in fashion, in all these areas that we, the older generation, are thinking are not profitable. But if you look at what has happened to music, because music is borderless and requires very little infrastructure, And because we have Nigerians, by virtue of what is going on in Nigeria, a lot of us outside of Nigeria, we're exporting our culture. So therefore, a lot more people are listening to Nigerian content, they're accepting it, and they are beginning to see it as part of popular culture globally. Now, music has transcended not because they are particularly super skilled. The same skill resides in the film space, in the fashion space, in arts, in visual arts, in all the areas that you call arts. Problem is, those areas need infrastructure, and they need support, and they need multiple talents pulled together to create one content. So, how do we survive? We survive because one or two of us exist in Nigeria that keep pushing and keep pushing and keep saying it can be done. And we're seeing the changes, even when we don't have streaming platforms. Netflix, Amazon, they stepped in. Again, they're not Nigerians. They are foreigners that have done it for us. And when we stream, even though we put in budgets of $200,000 to do a movie, listen to this. Nigerian movies have become #1 globally on Netflix. On Netflix. With a budget of less than $1 million. Now, Netflix has invested, and Amazon, billions of dollars in certain projects that have failed woefully. Yet, in Nigerian content that has spent $200,000, the maximum that I have spent doing a film is $800,000. And look at what happened to Fumilayo Ransom Kuti. It blew up. It has done more than Amazon ever expected without anybody promoting it for us, word of mouth. So, you know, some things are very clear, but we refuse to accept the truth. So I don't know what you want me to say other than that. Those of us that are doing it, we keep doing what we're doing, and those that are watching should keep watching. But change will come. Thank you.
Wow. I'm short of words. This is so deep. Because the creative industry is an industry where we have lots of young people, and they're actually smart. Beyond that is that Nigerians are truly blessed. So no matter what we put our hands in, that's why you find us keep doing things that looks like, you know, we can't bring anything out of. And then somehow along the line, it springs up. Our never dying attitude always helps us to survive. And I think that's a beautiful thing. To every Nigerian here, put your hands together for yourself. You have done well. And you are doing well. Please celebrate yourselves, please. All right, I'd like to, okay, she's here already. Olubumi Oluwaseun Kuku is the MD, Federal Airport Authority of Nigeria. My first question for you, ma'am, is what strategies is your organization adopting to navigate economic uncertainties and ensure resilience? Thank you.
Good morning again.
Good morning.
And thank you. I would say largely that at the Federal Airports Authority of Nigeria, we're largely vested with managing 22 airports across the country. I was speaking to colleagues a couple of days ago, largely around the airport viability. But some of the things that we are doing differently is really to implement cost reduction measures that we're putting into place. Also looking at different business models that would allow us to become sustainable. Some of those business models include outsourcing, especially at some of the lower levels where we can leverage organizations who have the competency or partner with them where it comes to their technical capabilities, as opposed to trying to do everything ourselves. In addition, we're doing quite a bit of work as it relates to route development and of course seeing how we can continue to diversify our revenue base. If you look at some of the large airport companies across the world, if you look at Aero de Paris, largely they've been able to diversify their revenue base to about 46% non-aeronautical revenue and about 53 or 54% on the aeronautical side. And what that means is that they are less dependent on the number of airlines or passenger traffic in terms of the revenue that comes in. And rather, they're looking at other things such as, you know, real estate, commercial businesses, the airport cities to help them drive this revenue. In Nigeria, we're far from this. Our revenues actually skew the other way. We're looking at an 80-20. So it's about 20% for non-aeronautical and about 80% for the aeronautical, meaning that we're largely dependent on the passenger traffic that goes between our airports. But I would say that there is indeed a lot of work for us to do to be able to drive that base. We spoke about some of the infrastructure modernization that we're working on. But despite that, it is important to note that developing our trade corridors, largely building cargo infrastructure or leveraging the existing cargo infrastructure that we have will also help us drive this greatly. It is indeed an interesting time for us in this market, largely when we see the potential for us to become an export nation as well. What I would say is that Nigeria has been known for largely driving imports or being an import market where we barely harnessed the opportunities that we have for cargo. As an organization, we do have existing infrastructure that can be leveraged. We're partnering, also looking at JV structures that can be put in place with other institutions or organizations. But keeping in mind that we should be putting incentives in place that would attract those investors into this economy, given some of the challenges that we've had with inflation as well as FX differential. I did hear one of the panelists speak to that, and I do believe that it has affected us a great deal as it relates to bringing investors on board. But despite that, there are a lot of incentives that we're looking at, and we're working very closely with other agencies of government. Some of those include tax incentives, also include some special economic zone incentives, because we do have some of those, some of our airports that are designated as special economic zones. But what I would say is that the airports are critical infrastructure and a gateway to our nation, and helps us as we look at the large contribution to GDP growth, the importance of continuing to diversify the revenue base that we bring into the market. But despite that, it's also important to talk about how we can become an efficient organization at FAM, because the efficiency that we put into play will largely help drive how we can grow the organization. We're also looking at things that we can do, or we have actually started putting those things in place around how we upskill as well as reskill some of our existing workforce. A lot of the teams that we have on ground have either been deprived of some required training, but what is important is that we can actually put the skills that they have to better use, where they're focused on more strategic type initiatives rather than mundane activities that can be automated. One of the things that we're also doing, I think sustainability was something that we had spoken about very greatly. From a sustainability perspective, we're looking at it from a business sustainability as well as environmental sustainability. From a business sustainability perspective, the business model, also thinking largely around the structure, so the legal entity structure, which we have in place, which will allow us to potentially have seamless processes. And I'll give an example. There's been a lot of waste, I would say, in public sector, largely driven by some of our procurement processes. And these procurement processes have either had where, we've had instances where we're procuring goods at much larger or at prices that are higher than expected because of either delays with credits, the impact of FX, as well as the inflationary environment. But putting ourselves in a structure, which I mentioned about cargo, putting ourselves and giving us a structure that allows us to be able to compete effectively with the private sector are also some of the initiatives that we have put in place. I would largely say that we should not negate the impact that aviation or the airport in itself has on the larger economy, as we put all of this together to make sure that we have a sustainable business an environment that gives us a large playing field. I believe Mrs. Bolanle Austin-Peters also referenced how she's been able to position herself and her industry in the global marketplace. Nigeria has a dynamic role in the aviation sector. We're actually top 5 in terms of the largest players when it comes to passenger traffic and also the number of airports that we have within our airport management company. Our desire is to strive towards efficiency in all areas, looking from passenger traffic to the commercial entities that we have, or the commercial activities that we have within our purview, that then repositions us for sustainability and viability. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I'm being told to round up, and I'm wondering, because I have 16 minutes more, G-Day, that's my daddy's name. Should I go on? Thank you very much. All right, I'll be asking our next speaker, Fumi Ubwe, the co-founder of Sigma. Given the current state of the economy, how concerned are you about the long-term sustainability of your business? And I know you will do that in 3 minutes, I trust.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. I'm very happy to be here. Nice to see you, Kemi. Nice to see everyone on the panel. In 3 minutes, it's a very simple response. So I have 2 companies that I run. The first one is called Sigma, and it works in the oil and gas industry. And the second one is Jake Riley, which is focused on public sector reform. You know, for me and for all of us in the organization, public sector industrialization, championing industrialization, and supporting industries at the very core of what we do, both on the Jake Riley public sector side and also on the Sigma side. And if you look at those 2 industries, they're extremely long-term, difficult to extract value from, and extremely challenging. So, you know, am I concerned about the sustainability of my business? Extremely. The economic landscape is quite challenging in those 2 industries at the moment, and extremely volatile, particularly in the oil and gas industry. You layer that with the net zero ambitions of a lot of the governments across the world, including Nigeria, because as you all know, Nigeria signed up to the Paris Agreement. And so there's almost sort of like a time bomb going off on the oil and gas industry. So I'm very vigilant. We're all very vigilant about the long-term sustainability of our business. But having said that, as a Nigerian, for me, I think this is almost like a national assignment, because I think whilst there's a heavy reliance on the oil and gas industry and the need to diversify, I firmly believe that the success and ability for us to extract value successfully and efficiently from the oil and gas industry is going to be fundamental to the growth of every other industry. I mean, as my dear friend Bolanle was saying, no matter where you look, it's always going to be small, and there's always going to be lack of scale, in any other industry, as long as the oil and gas industry is not succeeding. Because that's almost sort of like, if you will, the God-given cash machine that we have. I believe that, contributing our talent in our organization, all of us collectively, being led by me, obviously, to fast-track the development of this sector will industrialize Nigeria and financially empower Nigerians. And so this is what this is what keeps me up at night. This is what we commit to. And because we know, having said that it's volatile, we pivot, we expand, we sort of increase our remit to renewable energy. So we're trying to develop mini grids in the underserved communities, because I really don't believe that the central grid will get us anywhere. I think we've sort of gone past that stage where we can provide enough capacity in that grid. So I do think that, private grids, mini grids, just having the expanded network of grids is the way to go in our power sector. So we are sort of looking at that space by contributing to the mini grid space. The other thing that we're doing is we've acquired a bitumen license so that we can develop bitumen for asphalt. I really think it's a shame that in this century we still have such big gap in terms of infrastructure for roads. You can't have industry thriving if you don't have roads for them to transport their goods or for individuals to move from place to place. And I think the whole sort of urban-rural dynamics will shift once we have a proper road network where people can sort of go visit, go do meetings, and come back to live in their villages or in their towns. People don't have to always come to city and live there. So we're diversifying into that as well, and most importantly, leveraging technology. I really believe in the power of partnerships and people being able to sit virtually in virtual teams. So we have offices and talent working across Nigeria, so that people working in Port Harcourt, Lagos, wherever, people are able to contribute to the growth of the organization depending on where they are. And that way we can optimize the cost and the value of our operations. Finally, what can I say? I'm at core of myself a HR person, so I really believe that investing in talent, and talent development and professionalism is going to be, almost sort of like the final mitigant to, when the PwC man was speaking and he was talking about a lot of CEOs believe that, their business models are not going to take them past 10 years. I agree. I think that technology, but also people, professionalism is really going to be that thing that future-proofs every business. So we are investing heavily in a professional development institute to make sure that we can contribute to having those professionals that will take us into the future. We think that at the core of our organization is sort of this develop Nigerian agenda. And we have no choice. We have to stick around. We have to be here for the future. And yeah.
Thank you so much. I've been struggling not to cut you. Thank you so much. We have 9 minutes, and we're going to round up now. But I'm going to ask you questions that you answer in 1 minute. So if you go beyond that's the timer there. So if you go beyond 1 minute, I'm going to cut you, and it will be because I have been asked to do so. So thank you for understanding. Stella Okotete, Executive Director, Business Development, Nigeria Export and Import Bank. How has your being, so this will be like you're rounding up and you're parting shots. How has your being in the position that you are, how has it impacted other women in your organizations to dare to do what you're doing or to rise to where you are? 1 minute.
Okay, I just have 1 minute. Oh, it's been impactful, I can say, because it's encouraged more women. Today in Nexim, we have about 50% gender balance. We have 50% of female representation in the bank. And upon my resumption as executive director, I noticed a whole lot of things around the export value chain, the financing space, and all of that. And so we came up with a Women in Export Development Facility, YF, which has actually grown women-owned businesses in the export space. It has lifted women from playing in the value chain to today to becoming direct exporters. We also have an academy which we currently have more women participation, building capacity of women in the export space. It's really, really impacted. moving women from just picking cashew nuts or sesame seeds to actually processing, adding value, and exporting. And so I would say that we've encouraged women to own and be major players in the non-oil export space.
Thank you. Thank you. 1 minute. Thank you. Okay, Juliet, the Nigerian data from PwC's 2024 Workforce Hopes and Tears survey shows that only 42% of senior executives use AI, compared to 70%. So that big grammar is us saying the orgas at the top don't use AI, but the employees are using. What do you have to say about this, and how should this change?
So artificial intelligence tools are really important when we're thinking about boosting performance, when we're thinking about efficiency. AI has been around for a while. What more recently, though, the birth of generative AI has resulted in a lot of buzz and a lot more use cases. We can streamline a lot of the tasks that we're trying to perform by using these tools. So for example, comparative analysis, market surveys, just to practicalize this, last weekend I had to do a presentation, and I went to one of these systems and just said, draw me a table that shows the largest contributors to CO2 emissions in the world and the percentage contribution. It was something for the oil and gas space. And I got a table within seconds. This is something that would have taken me a lot of research to be able to create. So as leaders, we really need to lean into AI, the AI tools, look at where they can really help us to create those gains in efficiency and also to transform our organizations.
Fantastic. See, they don't have to keep the time. I'm told that there are questions or comments online and that we should look at the screen to see that. Jide, you just told me that, right? Are there people saying one or two things online? Closing questions. Okay, all right. Okay. I would like to ask Olubunmi Oluwaseun Kuku, the closing question for you is, how are global megatrends like technological disruption and climate change impacting your business strategy and operations? And can you share examples of successful adaptations of strategies in response to this? That's going to be 1 minute, but so I know you can do it. In 1 minute.
Just very quickly, airport are one of the largest contributors to carbon emissions. For us at the Federal Airports Authority of Nigeria, we have just embarked on a carbon accreditation program with the ACI. We're currently on level 2 of that program, where we're really just mapping out the areas that we will focus on, so basically what's in scope, what's out of scope. Also looking very critically at the infrastructure that we have and how we run our businesses today. We are introducing electric buses. We've actually just procured some of those. Also electric taxis in the Abuja airport. Leveraging solar in some of our smaller, or I would consider secondary airports. And also looking at how we can leverage off-grid power. Some of those are in place already. I will say that those, in a nutshell, are some of the initiatives that we are embarking on to reduce the carbon emission or our carbon footprint. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Fumi, this is for you, please. Fumi Obue. From your background in organizational change, how can business leaders encourage a culture of innovation in 1 minute?
All right, thanks very much. I think in 1 minute, the main way to embrace a culture of innovation is firstly to invest, to implement technology. So to use technology as much as possible, and also to measure, the impact, the usage, and to keep an eye on adoption. They say what doesn't get measured doesn't get done. So I would say to introduce it. So in our organization, we use things like M365. We do a lot of process automation. We use AI a lot, but you have to keep your eye on the matrices. How much are you spending? How much are you using? And how much? How are people, adopting and embracing that technology that you implemented? And more importantly, just leading from the front. You yourself as a leader, using technology and rewarding and encouraging those that are using it would be sort of like, in a nutshell, what I would say.
Thank you.
I find that in the public sector, though, there's a lot of apathy for technology because people are not wanting to embrace that transparency. So I think that's sort of, something that could work against culture.
Thank you. Thank you. So the final question. This is a bit hurry, but I trust Bola will finish everything in 1 minute. You've done so well, and a lot of people are looking up to you. What are you doing, either through BAP Productions or any other thing that you're doing, that is making you to be where you are now? What are you doing to help other people, other young ladies, to aspire to be the kind of person that you are, or even better, to get on the blockbuster and just scatter everything and make everything good? What do we have to do? What's the recipe to be BAP or more?
Right, so when I started the journey, it was really difficult finding previous people that had gone ahead of us. There was no documentation, so to speak. So I decided that I was going to make it easier for those coming after me. We started an academy funded by MasterCard Foundation, and everything that I have learned in the 20 years of running Terra and all my team members, we've put it down on paper with some professors from universities, and we have our own learning management system. We got funding from MasterCard Foundation. We've trained over 26,000 young people. We have offices in Kano, Lagos, Ogun State. We have practical centers where people can learn how to do this light that you see here. Sound is always a problem in Nigeria. Set design, entrepreneurial skills, things like that. We put them together on a learning management system, and it is free. MasterCard pays for all the students annually, so they go online, they learn, they get their certificates, and we plan to keep doing this for as long as we get the funding. Thank you very much.
Thank you, thank you. I want to say thank you to my panelists. I think the core of the matter is we're in challenging times, but you have to learn to lead through those challenging times, because those times will come and there's nothing we can do about it coming. But there's something we can do about living through it and having our experiences so that our businesses can become better. I want to say a big thank you to my panelists. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I don't want to start mentioning names again because we're out of time. So please, a round of applause for them, please. They did well. They said we should take pictures. Okay. Paparazzi part. Please make sure our steez is teasing. Like we're in Hollywood. Thank you very much and have an amazing time. My name is Kemi Ajimobi, and the last time I checked, I'm still working at Business Day.
Let's put our hands together for Kemi Ajimobi. That was an excellent panel session. And to the wonderful women that made this panel session exciting, we thank you very much. Let's put our hands together one more time for these wonderful ladies, business women. For me, I must say, it's nice to have a panel full of women that's just talking about business. We didn't once hear about anything to do with the fact that they were women, just simply business women, business people, which is very encouraging. So please allow me to establish some protocol. We've had some very special guests join us during this panel. Allow me to welcome the Central Bank Governor, Mr. Olayemi Cardoso. Let's put our hands together for him. Engineer Aminu Usman, Deputy Governor of Jigawa State. Your Excellency, thank you for being with us. We also have a very high-powered delegation from Kano State. So allow me to welcome Abdul Jakbar Garko, who is representing Engineer Baba Kabir. Let's put our hands together. And thank you to all the excellencies that are here with us as well. So it is tea time. So if you'd like to go behind and grab some tea, you're more than welcome to do so. But we will continue on with the program. We have a very special guest that will be giving the first welcome address. And her name is Professor Catherine Dugan, who is the director of the University of Cape Town Graduate School of Business. Let's put our hands together for her as she comes onto the stage. And I'll tell you a little bit about her as well. Before joining the University of Cape Town Business School, she was the Vice Dean and Professor of Management and Political Economy at the African Leadership University School of Business in Rwanda. She also is the founding Vice Dean of Business of the school's first faculty as well. She's worked as a professor at Harvard Business School, and we're very excited to welcome Professor Dugan as she gives the first keynote address. Let's put our hands together for her.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning to the current governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, to the former governor of the Central Bank of Kenya, to all of our distinguished guests. Thank you very, very much for the invitation this morning. I'm really looking forward to being able to talk to all of you. I do have a number of slides, but I don't have a clicker. And so as we get a clicker on the stage, I'm going to share with you. And that comes from Chimamanda Adichie. And what she says is, stories matter. Many stories matter. Stories have been used to dispossess and to malign, but stories can also be used to empower and to humanize. Stories can break the dignity of a people, but stories can also repair that broken dignity. And that is what I'm going to talk to you about today, is stories, dignity, and confidence. And before I talk more than that, let me start by talking my own story. So my family has been involved in Nigeria since the late 1940s. So if you will forgive me, I like to think of myself as a Nigerian. I hope you'll accept me. But I did spend a lot of time in Uganda, and this story is about Uganda. Because when I was in Uganda, I had, so I went to Uganda to do field work once upon a time, and I had no money. I was a graduate student, and so I relied on public transport to get everywhere. In Uganda, danfos are called taxis. And this is the main taxi park in Uganda. When I was there, I stood here, I looked at this space, and I thought to myself, I should have stayed in California. I'm never going to, in a different way, which is, as you are driving to work in the, they express their discontent, often not in constructive ways, and that happens both, again, in countries as well as in companies. So the question then is, how do we ask people or get people to both stay and express themselves in constructive ways? And the answer to that is that third word in the book title, loyalty. So the question is, how do we get people to build loyalty, to build a feeling of belonging, of having impact, of being part of something larger than themselves? Another way of putting this, and you may have seen this in the business literature, is how do we make sure that those 52% in the middle are becoming engaged? So here you see 29% are rowing hard, they're engaged. About 19% are jumping off the end of the boat, they're exiting. How do we make sure that that middle 52% have the kind of engagement that will not only keep them on the boat, but that will actually make them lean forward so that we can all row together? And again, that's important in countries and in companies. So let's go back to this particular gravestone because it's from Buckminster Fuller, who is a famous architect. And he actually created what you may know as Epcot Center, among other things. And what he wrote on his gravestone was, "Call me Trim Tab." I actually saw this gravestone, it's in Boston, and when I saw it, I didn't know what a trim tab was, and I didn't know why you might want to be called Trim Tab. So I looked it up, and it turns out that this is what he said about a trim tab. He said, think of the Queen Elizabeth. The whole ship goes by, and then comes the rudder. And there's a tiny thing on the edge of the rudder called the trim tab. It's a miniature rudder. Just moving the little trim pulls the rudder around. It takes almost no effort at all. And then he says, so I said that the little individual can be a trim tab. Society thinks it's going right by you, that it's left you altogether. But if you're doing dynamic things mentally, the fact is that you can just put your foot out like that, and the whole big ship of state is going to go. So I call that the trim tab, and I said, call me trim tab. And that is one of the ways in which we can encourage, especially the young people who work for and with us, to engage, to let them know you do not have to be the big oga. You can be a person who feels small and still manage to turn a great ship. So let's talk for a moment about the hero's journey. We talked about movies very recently. If we wanted to go see a movie, we would never go see a movie where the hero starts out and everything is easy. Throughout the entire movie, everything is easy, and then at the end, everything continues to be easy. That would be the most boring movie ever. Instead, we go to movies where the hero develops throughout the course of the movie. He is subject, or she is subject to very serious challenges, and then the fact that they are able to get through those challenges in the first half of the movie sets them up both for them to know and for us to know that when the time comes to save the world, and it always does, they will be able to do it. So as we think about doing business in Africa, I like to describe it as doing business on hard mode. If any of you have ever played video games, when you play a video game, you can play on easy mode, on regular mode, or on hard mode. What you do every single day is to do everything that people in Singapore and New York and London are doing, but you're also thinking about many, many, many other things. You're thinking about things that no one in New York has had to think about in a long time. You are playing on hard mode, and that means you are smarter and faster and more agile than the people who are playing in easy mode. So as we talk about this, as we begin to wrap up, the question is, how do we bring this all together? And the answer is not by telling people it's easy, by telling people that it will be easy. What we've seen, both from Britain during the war, as people came together, as well as in lots of other countries, is that people like being asked to pull together. They are willing to sacrifice if they are given a reason to sacrifice and an explanation as to why it's important. And as leaders, that is one of our core jobs. It is to make sure that we are telling everybody where we're going and why we're doing what we do, so that we can then ask them to sacrifice, and they will not only do it, but they will do it in an excited way. They are willing to do it in the way that we see this happening in Britain during the war, and also in Japan, which came from humiliation after the Second World War, occupation by the United States, and built itself into one of the great powers of the 20th century because people were pulling together, they were working very, very hard, and they were thinking about this in terms of a Japanese term called gammon, which means perseverance, patience, and self-restraint. They were sacrificing so that they could come together and build the country. There's another Japanese term that I want to introduce you to, which is kintsugi. Kintsugi is the process of repairing broken things with gold. So as you can see, this bowl has broken, and instead of throwing it away or gluing it in a way that makes it hides the fact that it was broken, someone has repaired it with gold to make it not only more obvious that it has been broken, but to make it more beautiful than it ever was before. So kintsugi tells us things that are unique because they were broken are more beautiful than things that were never broken. And again, that applies to people, to countries, and to companies. So, What is one of the greatest statements of this, in my estimation? It is John F. Kennedy's inaugural speech. He became president at a moment when the United States and everybody in the world was afraid of nuclear war. And he gave an inaugural speech which, rather than downplaying the risk, rather than saying everything is going to be okay, he came in and he said, I do not shrink from this responsibility, I welcome it. He started actually saying, in the long history of the world, only a few generations have been granted the role of defending freedom in its hour of maximum danger. And then he said, I do not shrink from this responsibility, I welcome it. See what he's done. He started with the broad picture. He moved to I. He started talking about himself, but then he shifts again. And he says, I do not believe that any of us would exchange places with any other people or any other generation. He says, the energy, the faith, the devotion which we bring to this endeavor will light our country and all who serve it. And the glow from that fire can truly light the world. That is what he's saying. He's painting this picture about where we're going. And then he says very famously, and so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. My fellow citizens of the world, ask not what America will do for you, but what together we can do for the freedom of men. So, to begin to wrap up, I wanted to give you very briefly an example from Morocco of how a CEO changed the culture in order to bring people together. This is OCP, which is a mining company in Morocco. It was organized just like every mining company in your mind. It was very top down until the new CEO came in and decided to do something differently. And rather than saying everybody has to do exactly this or that at any given moment, instead he said, let's listen to the people on the ground. Let's listen to the guys who are running these big mining machinery. Let's listen to the young people in our offices. And as a result of this, he was able to turn around this mining company and create so many spin-off businesses that they actually are enormously profitable, these spin-offs in their own right. And one of the ways that he did that was by instilling a corporate culture of Nia. Nia is an Arabic word which means to come with basically trust and good intentions. His idea was, throughout OCP, every single person comes all the time with trust and good intentions, and they talk about how much they are contributing to Morocco. And I want to note that what we are doing here is contributing to Nigeria. And I will leave you by just saying, remember the first question I asked, or at least the question that I suggested that you should ask yourself as you are driving to work, which is, why do I do what I do, and how am I contributing to the growth of Nigeria? And I promise you, every single one of you, every single company represented in this room is really helping to drive this growth in this country to make Nigeria what we know it can be. And the question for me is, how will you tell me, the rest of us, and most importantly, the people who work for you? How will you share your vision? How will you share why you do what you're doing? And once we do that, we can all come together and build Nigeria into the country that we know is possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Catherine Dugan, for that wonderful address. That definitely deserves a standing ovation. I don't know about you, but I feel like signing up to the University of Cape Town ASAP, because that was excellent. Thank you so very much for bringing your whole self and for bringing the energy that we so desperately needed. Thank you all. Allow me to recognize some VIPs that have also walked in. The Lagos State Governor, Mr. Babajide Olushola Sanwo-Olu, ably represented by the Deputy Governor, Dr. Kadri Obafemi Hamzat. Let's put our hands together for him. Thank you for being with us today. Mr. Mohammed Sani Abdullahi, Deputy Governor, Economic Policy of the Central Bank of Nigeria. Thank you for being with us. Omowunmi Akingumbe, Executive Director of WIMBIZ. Thank you very much.
More recently, however, we've seen a retreat from globalization by the advanced economies. Concerns about the possible breakdown of supply chains and national security have caused these countries to consider reducing their dependency on foreign manufacturers in some key industries. By encouraging local solutions, onshoring and nearshoring of key components, which would result in a more fragmented world. These recent concerns have reinforced long-standing fears about the differentiated impact of globalization and ignited discussions about how to better manage globalization. Nonetheless, I'm convinced that the benefits of the interconnectedness of economies augurs well with a resurgence of globalization. Closer home, the operationalization of the African Continental Free Trade Area is expected to create an Africa-wide market with resultant benefits from economies of scale. The fourth megatrend is the urgent need to support policies and actions to deal with climate change. The global situation with respect to climate change remains dire and urgent. All hands on deck sort of situation. Further, the State of the Climate in Africa report in 2020 indicated that the climate indicators in Africa were characterized by extreme weather events such as floods, droughts, increasing temperatures, and accelerated rise in sea levels, with devastating impact on millions of the population. And getting back on track to reach the 2030 targets will require massive acceleration of efforts to mitigate and adapt to climate change by all citizens, corporates, and countries. Further delays in these commitments would spell doom to our destiny. So these are the four megatrends more relevant for us today that I believe will touch every corner of Africa. In the rest of my address, I will reflect on how to prepare for these megatrends. What are the key elements for preparedness for the opportunities that will emerge as Africa transforms towards 2050? What must we do for Africa's moonshot to succeed? For succeed, we must. But before delving into these questions, here's a story I want to tell. Climbing Mount Everest is extremely challenging and dangerous. And with 17 reported deaths, 2023 was the deadliest year in Everest's history. Against this sober news is that of Sherpa Gelje, I'm sorry about the pronunciation, Gelje, who in May of 2023, while climbing with his client and only 500 meters elevation from the summit, came across an unconscious climber, alone, without oxygen, abandoned on the trail by his friends and guides. This was in the death zone, above 8,000 meters, where the brutal conditions would lead to certain death. Gelje Sherpa convinced his client to abandon the summit attempt and instead decided to rescue the stricken climber. Gelje Sherpa wrapped him up and carried him on his back down the mountain for 6 hours. A very daring and Herculean effort, of course, before another guy joined in the rescue. Regrettably, the story's happy ending was shattered by the rescued climber going on TV interviews and social media after he had recovered, thanking everyone else except Jelka Shelpa, who carried him all the way down, who rescued him, and of course promoting his own exploits. He even blocked the rescuer on Instagram. Just bizarre. Following an uproar slamming the rescued climber, he eventually thanked Jelka Shelpa, and everyone was happy to let the story end there. Now, I recount this story to underscore the huge debt of gratitude that each one of us has and should acknowledge to those that were there for us at crucial moments. We can never fully repay them. You would have thought that having your life saved in such extreme circumstances would be a humbling experience that generated profound gratitude. For me, it is also a reminder of the huge responsibility to build our country and continent, the much we can for the benefit of others, even though we will not get the recognition. That's the story I wanted to tell. And I now turn to the question of what is needed for Africa's moonshot to succeed. And I group my thoughts around 4 key themes. The first of this, quality jobs must be created in sufficient numbers to absorb the emerging youth. I think this is obvious. A total of 3.7 jobs, as I said, are created in Africa, and this will increase to more than 10 million annually. I mentioned a number like 15 million. This will certainly not happen if we continue as we have done before. To further compound the problem, we don't even know the type of jobs that will be created as technology is changing quickly. How we work and what we do for work. According to one estimate, about 2/3 of students entering high school this year around the world will have careers that have not yet been invented. So this speaks to the importance of their adaptability, and it puts a lot of pressure on schools and businesses to escape the methods of the past. The second theme, the basic building blocks of economic development must be put in place. This, for the most part, is the legitimate responsibilities of governments, influenced by government policies and actions. While the declared objective of governments is to improve the economic and social outcomes for the population, the most immediate objective is to put in place the conditions that will allow those outcomes. These conditions include strong macroeconomic fundamentals supported by strong institutions, well-designed and well-implemented economic policies, such as relating to tax regime, regulation of markets, protection of property rights, etc. The desired outcomes, of course, include low and stable inflation, inclusive productivity growth, appropriate and predictable tax regime, low cost of doing business, appropriate spending, and fiscal budget, etc. The government should also foster the development of its citizens, including providing education, health, security, etc. Nonetheless, there is that sort of exchange between governments and businesses, and I'll make a few observations on this. That first, the government and businesses profess support of good economic policies. That is something that I think we understand and live by. Second, businesses have a long list of grievances, if you may, things that the government and public institutions should take care of. And I think there are many of these, including the unpredictable tax regime, complications of intra-Africa travel, poor infrastructure, etc. And then thirdly, while there's a lot of dialogue between businesses and policymakers, political vested interests often dominate the outcomes. This is probably an issue more for political scientists to study. But from our perspective, we all know the term state capture, which has now entered the regular lexicon of our conversations. The government also discusses these matters with civil society, influencers, concerned citizens, and the media. And I think all of us have seen those images from my dear country, Kenya, of, let's say, robust conversation of protesters with government on the issue of the finance bill, which of course spilled into violence, etc. But in the end, there is an ongoing conversation about the political, indeed the economic policies of the government. Thirdly, businesses must embrace the responsibility of creating meaningful jobs in and supporting a favorable environment for long-term growth. As is the case elsewhere, as is the case everywhere, returns on equity, the ROEs that we know, or the price earnings ratios, PE ratios, and the bottom line are easy clutches for businesses. But people centricity should be at the heart of their products and operations, and they cannot be blind to the needs of citizens. Additionally, while the immediate focus of business or their outputs, their decisions affect future outcomes, including the opportunities that will be available for other businesses and workers, this is especially relevant as innovations will necessarily impact on the number and skilled composition of workers. So the interaction between businesses and CSOs and other agencies is less streamlined, but is a concern for you as well. Businesses do not exist in vacuum, but are tightly woven into the society, giving and taking from it. So keeping the production processes running is crucial for productivity and the bottom line, which underscores the importance of good labor relations. However, in the presence of large pools of labor that can quickly run and the required skills, the need for businesses to be loyal or fair is diminished. Further, well-meant actions by businesses may have unintended consequences and even intensify deep-seated antagonism. These agencies will raise concerns about employment growth, wage and other benefits, support for the community, and more generally, income inequalities, as we have seen in advanced economies. And the last of these themes, then, is services and not manufacturing. I contend that services and not manufacturing will dominate in terms of employment creation. Unlike when the Asian tigers industrialized, manufacturing industries are no longer the labor-absorbing activities they used to be. And summarizing his recent research on this topic, Danny Roderick argues, and I quote, "Innovation in manufacturing has taken a predominantly skill-based form, reducing demand for workers with relatively low level of education." So the rising skill and capacity intensity of manufacturing in turn means that globally competitive formal segments of manufacturing in developing countries have lost the ability to absorb significant amounts of labor. They have effectively become enclave sectors, not that different from mining, with limited potential and few positive effects on the supply side of the rest of the economy, end quote. Achieving sustainable, inclusive growth will depend on creating opportunities in the services sector. And services range from transport, telecoms, finance, IT, tourism, health, education, etc. And currently, they account for about half of the workforce in low and medium income countries, up from about 40% in 1990. Even the share of workers in manufacturing has held steady. Services generate more than 2/3 of global GDP. They create the largest number of jobs. But the productivity and quality of those jobs need to be increased. So as I finish, I know that a lot of attention is being given to cross-border payments, which is one of the barriers to trade in Africa. Others include high tariffs, cumbersome border procedures, divergent commercial regulations, poor roads and air links. However, it is crucial that more attention is given to cross-border trade in services and investment flows. The role of Africans in the diaspora should also be expanded beyond their remittances. They should serve as a bridge for innovative ideas, technology, and management practices that create sustainable businesses at home. Instructively, India's success story in the IT industry is anchored in the diaspora, with many successful startups having been founded by Indian diaspora. I'll end where I started, emphasizing Africa's favorable demographic landscape over the next 25 years. We'll certainly face phenomenal challenges, but we cannot accept the prospect of losing a generation. We have the essentials for Africa's moonshot to 2050, and it is up to each of us to determine the outcome. We can write the story of Africa's new golden age, but there are no simple solutions. You get knocked down 100 times, and you get up every time. As the singer Rudy Boy declares, if I not get today, I go get them tomorrow. I recall a fictitious story about an older man, Jim, whose memory loss had become quite acute. He had recently visited a specialist, and his friend inquired how this was going. Very well, Jim replied. The doctor taught me some techniques, such as visualization and association, which has really helped me. Wow, that's great, his friend responded. What is your doctor's name? Jim's face suddenly went blank. And after a few moments, he muttered, what is the name of this beautiful flower with a long stem and thorns? You mean a rose, his friend responded. Yes, that's it, Jim retorted and then yelled to the next room, Rose, Rose, what's the name of my doctor? Well, Africa is like a rose. Yes, it has some thorns, but it grabs you in the end. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Patrick Njoroge, former governor of the Central Bank of Kenya. Just put your hands together for him again. Okay. Thank you. How do you say thank you in Swahili? I know Hujambo is welcome. Asante sana. Thank you. All right. We're moving on very quickly to two sessions, a Q&A and a fireside chat. The first session will feature the last two speakers, Catherine Duggan and Patrick Njoroge, and will be moderated by Olusegun Zaccheaus, who's a partner and West Africa lead at PwC Strategy. So ladies and gentlemen, I'm inviting all three of them to come up stage now. This will run for 10 minutes, and right after that, we'll have a fireside chat with the Governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, Mr. Olayemi Cardoso. And immediately after that, we're going to have a panel of 3 governors, the governors of Lagos State, the governors of Lagos State, Jigawa State, and Kano State, respectively. So, whilst Catherine Duggan was commencing her speech, you said you feel like a Nigerian, yes? So Lagos is happy to welcome you. And since you feel like a Nigerian, I think it's only appropriate that you adopt a Nigerian name. So of all the names that you have heard in Nigeria, which is your favorite? Is it Kemi? Is it Funke? Is it Omowale? Is it Joke? Is it Amina or Aisha? If you don't have a name, the Deputy Governor of Lagos will give you one.
I will answer that as diplomatically as I can.
Okay.
Which is to say, if you recall, some years ago, there was a Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola was doing a thing where you could drink Coca-Cola with somebody. They would have the name on the label.
Yes.
My favorite label said chairman.
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 So, very good. So, the interesting thing is that people who are named chairman in Nigeria, they are everywhere. When you don't know somebody's name and you want to greet them, you just say chairman. How now? Is that not so? Whether you're on the streets or anywhere, everybody is chairman. So we're going to give you some time to think about it. And if you don't get a name, the deputy governor, you have an assignment. I think you start jotting down names. Please put your hands together for them as they begin the session.
All right, thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. I think we've had a very fantastic presentation from our 2 speakers, and this is what I'm going to do. If you have a question to ask them in the audience, I'm just going to take 3 people. And please raise up your hand so that they can bring the mic to you, right? But while we're waiting for that to happen, I have a very quick question, and let me start this way. And the first question is really, if you look at the times we are, especially for Nigeria, it's a time of short-term shocks in which you're dealing with inflation, you're dealing with high exchange rate, etc. And if you then take a medium-term look at the world, it's also a time of major shifts, where AI is playing out, etc. What would be, and I'll start with you, Catherine, what would be your recommendations to CEO on how they can sort of adapt to the changes that's happening in front of their nose and also prepare for the medium-term trends that we see in the next few years?
Thank you very much. I think the most important thing is every single day to pick your head up out of your books, out of your meetings, out of the things that you're trying to do to survive, and say, where am I going more broadly? But then also, again, inspire not only others, but also yourself. Because one of the things that we do as leaders is burn out. And one of the things that happens is we end up losing that drive on our own. And so more than anything, I mean, there are lots of things that I could tell you about strategic approaches and ways to map things out, but the real answer that I would give you is we need to inspire ourselves and others, and that inspirational leadership will bring us together. We know what Nigerians are capable of. Nigerians are the most successful minority group in the United States. We know what Nigerians are capable of. We know in this country what a remarkable place this is. What we don't always have an opportunity to remind ourselves is we will get there no matter how hard it is this morning. So I would say that is my best piece of advice, is we need all of the tools, we need all of the skills, but we also need to keep our heads up and to remind the young people that it's okay if they've gone someplace else to learn other things, but they have to come back because this is where the future is, and they have the opportunity to build it here.
Thank you very much. Let me quickly go to you, Dr. Njoroge, right? And we were discussing earlier, and what you realize when external pressure that you see outside Africa, the geopolitical fragmentation, etc. And in the middle of this, and when you talked about demographics, you said Africa and Nigeria were going to rule the world from demographic perspective. What to you would be recommendation to policy authorities of 3 things they must focus on to ensure the future is realizably successful. What are your thoughts on that?
Thank you. Before answering it, I want to remind you of what has happened over centuries in Africa. I don't know, you've seen these little boats that, or now you see replications of them, that let's say our forefathers used to sail from our part of the world, the eastern part of Africa, they would sail all the way to Persian Gulf, etc. Now, those things are tiny. I mean, you didn't see me on it. To cross the ocean, no way. Possibly to the reef, but not farther. But the point is they were able to do that. They knew the difficulties that they were going to face, the waves and all those other things. They had rudimentary sort of techniques for navigation. But those were sufficient to maintain commerce, etc. My point in this is that the difficulties will always be there. We cannot shrink in the face of those difficulties. And I like the quote by JFK that you had on your slides. The difficulties will be there. We take responsibility for them. And I think first and foremost, the CEOs and indeed the governments, the people responsible for decision making, should take full responsibility of those, not to shrink and say, oh, there was a general point, you're asking more about government. There's a general point of looking at only the problems. And we don't look at the other side of the balance sheet. What are your strengths? This is a typical thing. When you interview people, you generally ask them questions about what are your areas of, difficulties, problems, whatever. And when you have your annual discussion with them, you generally say, well, this area you're weak in, this is what you need to do. Very rarely do we say, these areas you are strong in, and maybe you could benefit from your strengths in this way. Africa has a lot of strengths. The people that we mentioned, the population that are coming. When we talked, the panel before us talked about the musicians, talked about the artists. I mean, everybody now is accepting that actually Africa has a lot to offer. I mean, even I think it was the Oscars, or whatever it is, the Grammys or the awards, and they now have recognized that there's significant quality that is being generated from here. I think the issue has to be supporting the people, the young people as they grow. So look at the youth as a sort of a pool of strength, and to see how best to present them for us and for everyone else in the world. That, I think, is what we need to do.
All right, thank you very much. I would like to take questions from the audience. Do we have any question from the audience? Any hand up? All right, we have in front. Can we pass the mic to her very quickly?
Thank you very much. I'm the Consul General of Denmark, and if nobody else wants to ask a question, I would. Denmark is one of the leading countries in the world in terms of green transition and sustainability. If you had one wish, only one, to the European constellation, we also had the EU-Nigeria Business Forum last week in Abuja. What would be your one wish to
focus on making sure that the countries like Nigeria, where 85% of our exports depend on oil, that we are fundamentally having this just support for countries that will be incredibly heavily affected both by climate change and by a sudden shift away. So I think as we think about imports into Europe, as we think about what we do next, I think really emphasizing that it isn't just about carbon, it's also about people, and we have to figure out how to navigate between those two. That would be my plea.
Actually, I completely agree with that. The issue of climate change has to be equitable. And I think what we are seeing now is proposals that are very inequitable. So I would make the point, as Catherine said, that that's really the solution for where we are going to go. Has to be one that allows Africa, Nigeria in particular, being carbon rich, to time to transit in particular ways. And actually they're doing a pretty good job. If you look at some of the industries that they have recently put in place, they are not as, let's say, polluting as happened in other industries in other nations that were set up, let's say, 20 years ago. So that's what I would say.
So there are two things, as we finish up, there are two things that I want to say. The first thing that I want to emphasize is that for a very long time, people in places like the United States have thought that this continent is where you give your money away after you've made it somewhere else. And my mission for my entire career has been to share the real story of African business, which I see here in Lagos every day. If you need a bit of inspiration, let me tell you, I am more inspired by what I see in Lagos, in the energy and the possibility, than anywhere else. The second thing I'll leave you with is a quote from a Nigerian author, because you have the best authors in the world here, Ben Okri. And he writes, "Let us look at the world with new eyes. We must look at ourselves differently. We are freer than we think. We haven't begun to live yet. The man whose light has come on in his head, in his dormant sun, can never be kept down or defeated. We can redream this world and make the dream real." And I invite you all, with one another, with all of us, let us redream this world and make Nigeria into the place that we have dreamed it to be.
Thank you very much. I think one pattern, okay, a question in front. Please go ahead with your question, ma'am.
Thank you very much. My name is Amina Ayagbala, and thank you very much, Professor and Doctor, for your excellent presentations. Doctor, I think you alluded to the fact that you said through services presents a huge opportunity in terms of creating jobs. As you know, the Nigerian population is now about 230 million, growing by about 5 million every year and more, about 2.5% every year. And Professor, you mentioned in your presentation, how China has refocused its energies on manufacturing. So in terms of looking for solutions for Nigeria and the African continent, what should we be focusing on? Is it both, or is it manufacturing first and then services to create the jobs that we so desperately need? Thank you.
Doctor, you can start first.
I think there's, maybe I need to clarify something that I said very quickly. I think it is very important to maintain the improvement and development in manufacturing. And I think Nigeria has done very well. For instance, think about we used to import a lot of cement, we used to import a lot of finished products in fuel, etc. And the internal capacity that has been built will help reverse those imports, right? So I think that is important. But at the end of the day, we need jobs. And those jobs will not be in manufacturing. Manufacturing will continue to be at the same, let's say, level as they are in the advanced economies. And there, the same processes, literally. And there you can already see that if anything, the number of jobs in manufacturing will decline. So this is why I made this point about services. It has to be in services where we will get the jobs for our youth. And services here is not just being, well, a waiter or things like that. It is much wider. We talked about music. We talked about IT. So there's a lot of services that today now need a lot of, and one of the things that I've always, as a governor, and I used to make the case that Africa should actually supply a lot of CEO bankers to the rest of the world. There's absolutely no reason why we shouldn't do that. So it's services. So I just want to clarify and underscore the point that in terms of employment, our young people will have jobs in services, and therefore we need to provide for that in certain ways today.
All right, Prof, can you just respond in 1 minute so that we can close this panel?
All I need to do is co-sign that. It's wonderful to have an expert. It's wonderful to have an expert on the panel, thank you, because I will only have to say I thought that was absolutely right. Thank you very much.
All right, can we clap for our speakers?
Please put your hands together for them. Please stand for a group photograph. I'd like to ask Mr. Frank Aigbogun to join them. Mr. Frank Aigbogun, please come up stage to join them for a group photograph. Now, how many of you noticed the energy in Catherine? The Lagos energy is in her, isn't it? So more than anything else, she deserves that name. Mr. Deputy Governor, I hope the name is ready. So she started her presentation with a Nigerian author, and she ended with another Nigerian author. The first was Chimamanda Adichie, and the second was Ben Okri. And since Chimamanda is female, how does Catherine Chimamanda Dogan sounds? Those in favor say aye. Those against keep quiet. The ayes have it. Chimamanda.
I'm not worthy of that.
Chimamanda Negodum. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Please put your hands together for them. And now we're at one of the high points of today's event. It's a fireside chat on revitalizing Nigeria's economy, strategic monetary policies for sustainable growth. I'd like to invite Mr. Aigbogun to take his seat already. And I'd like to welcome Mr. Olayemi Cardoso, Governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria. Please give him a warm round of applause.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. So this is a fireside chat with our own governor, the governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria. I'm going to set a context for our conversation. And the context, of course, is the theme of our forum this year, which is leadership in tough economic times. Mr. Governor, I'd like to welcome you and also to thank you for accepting to take part in this, for participating in the CEO Forum and of course joining in the fireside chat. When you were appointed, in fact, before you were appointed, for those who had the privilege of dreaming or hearing that you were going to be appointed governor of the central bank, and then, of course, when you were then appointed, there was a similar chorus, and which was that, this one will be a good governor at the central bank. I recall that the president, before the election, at an occasion at the economic summit, called you the headmaster. So I'd like to start by asking you, what leadership qualities brought you into the Central Bank of Nigeria as governor? And how have these qualities served you thus far?
Hello? Okay. Thank you very much, Frank. First of all, before I respond to your question, I really do want to commend you and your organization. 2001 is when you started this enterprise. Yes. And you're still running strong. Yeah. we certainly need more like this in Nigeria. That's the missing piece. And I will also stand on existing protocols. Now, let me say that with respect to the qualities that may have contributed towards my position in the central bank, there are a number of things. Actually, there's one particular thing that is very dear to me, and that is, as a policy maker, I am very, very committed to one thing, and that is that if at the end of the day we cannot make policies, and we do not make policies that impact the man on the street, then what is the point of doing them? And I think that is so critical, and I definitely have taken that to the job I have been doing in the past 7 or 8 months. That whatever it is we do must ultimately impact the man on the street, the average person. And frankly, as economists, as bankers, as finance people, it is very easy to be in a bubble and really not appreciate that ultimately this is how you will make a difference to the environment you live in. I find that it is very important to listen. And I must say that a good number of the policy statements that came out of the central bank over the recent past, many of them came out as a result of listening to what problems people had, issues people raised, and how, again, certain things were negatively impacting on people. And we responded accordingly with those. So these are things that are carefully thought out, carefully crafted in response to dysfunctions that we find within the economy. Both things that we know and things that we hear other people have a problem with. Of course, collaboration is also key. And in the spirit of this, we find it is so important that we recognize as the central bank, we must collaborate with others. We cannot do it on our own. Chief collaborator in this respect is the fiscal side. In particular, the Ministry of Finance, the Ministry of Trade and Industry, and the rest. Okay? Without that, you're only, as they say sometimes, clapping with one hand. So collaboration is very, very important in getting the job done. Then, of course, transparency. And I know that I am talking to a very sophisticated audience here, so frankly, there's not much more to add there other than to say that one of the new tools that I thought was very important when I got into the seat was to open up discussions to the press, which we do after MPC, and people could also dial in. We do this, so far we've had 3 MPC meetings, and it's been open for people who feel they want to question and contribute towards the decisions that are taken. And of course, we defend ourselves accordingly. So transparency is very, very, very key. And it will only continue. It's an element that we feel we will continue to do whatever is necessary to improve on it. Communication, of course, another very important issue, as far as I can see. And there are times where nobody needs to tell you that you need to get out there and talk to people. Nobody needs to tell you. You will know. You will feel it. And if some of you may recall, and Frank, if you may recall, earlier on, a couple of months after I became central bank governor, we actually approached the media, and I had a lengthy parley at the time. I think it was Arise News at the time, which helped to douse the feelings of uncertainty and also give an idea of the way forward. Nobody needs to tell you that as a leader, you cannot shy away from communicating. Nobody needs to tell you this, okay? It is so fundamental. And there are different forms of it. Even, okay, an avenue like this, an opportunity like this. We are here now, we're communicating. There are critical issues that people may not have adequately understood, and where we have the opportunity to clarify, we will do so. And that, again, is something that we will do we've been doing on a continuous basis. Print media, television, whatever means, we cannot shy away from communicating. There's no such thing as over-communicating. So I just want to make that particular aspect very important. In the days gone by, central bank governors typically are seen as a group that should say very little. But I believe those days have changed, okay? At the same time, you've got to find a balance, and you've got to be very clear in the way you communicate so that people don't misinterpret what you say.
Thank you, Mr. Governor. So we've heard about, you didn't tell us why the president called you headmaster, but that's okay. We've heard about partnership, we've heard about transparency, we've heard about communication. And I thank you for your response. Now, there was, again, we're talking about leadership in tough economic times. I imagine that on your arrival, the first day on your desk, one of the toughest things that you needed to deal with was just sorting out the huge backlog of FX payments. And I'd like to ask you, how did you come to prioritize that? Because even where I was, there were those who were arguing, if I got $7 billion, I can't use all of it to settle backlog. I would have to keep some for some other things. How did you manage to, prioritize that, and what does it say about your leadership style?
Thank you very much, Frank. It's an excellent question. And I would even go further to say that before I got into the seat, into the saddle, when I was going through the Senate hearings, I actually made that statement, even before I was confirmed, that my first priority will be to settle that backlog. And I was very clear on that. And you're absolutely right. A good number of people came to me at the time and said, look, this doesn't make sense. Why would you prioritize so much money to pay back people and, businesses and all that, when you can use that for actually growing and opening up the foreign exchange market? I got a lot of pressure on that. But I think what perhaps many failed to realize is that here we are in a situation where Nigeria was in a state of crisis. Nigeria was in a state where there was a lot of loss of confidence. And to be honest with you, even without that, it is so important that you hold high your integrity. As a bank, your yes must be yes. That is a big, major step in building credibility. It's a big, major step in building credibility. Very tempting, I must tell you, very tempting to push that aside and say, let's leave that for another time. Very tempting. Very tempting. But ultimately, I was convinced that if we did not do that at that time, we would pay the price for it as a country.
Thank you, Mr. Governor. In a recent interview, you were very clear in saying that you believe that Nigeria has seen, or that the local currency, the naira, has seen the worst of volatility. What exactly do you mean, and how much reassurance can you provide to our audience this afternoon?
An excellent question there. Let me just go back and explain something that I think is very important for people to understand in answering that question. Now, when we came into the saddle of leadership at the central bank, we looked at the system and found that there were an awful lot of distortions within the system. For example, illicit flows. For example, people not abiding by the rules. Let me put it that way. People not abiding by the rules. And it was very important that we address these things so that the market could function more smoothly and a lot better. Now, in the process of doing this, sometimes what you find is that there's pushback. There are those who are used to doing things in a certain way and want to continue doing it that way. And that in itself has its own dysfunctions. So it's important for those who are on the other side to recognize that we are going to be consistent in doing what we are doing before markets begin to settle. So we believe that quite a portion of that volatility, the wide swings in rates, part of that was attributed to this. Okay, part of it was attributed to this. And we believe that with time, stakeholders are becoming a lot more comfortable with the way the market is being run. That the need to, for example, front load, you don't need it, but you are front loading your requests. A lot of that is beginning to settle. Even I dare say with portfolio investors, we found a good number of them came in, left, and then came in again because they were pretty comfortable that there was a plan and that the plan was headed in a direction that they could see, they understood, and they trusted. Okay, so to my mind, a lot of the, wide swings that we saw are gradually beginning to smooth out as a result of a better understanding of the market, the greater transparency that is taking place, and the comfort that those who are using the market see in it.
Thank you very much, sir. I wanted to just, an extra question there is to ask you, the central bank some time ago eased the requirements for FX proceeds by oil companies. And I wanted to ask you, what has been the impact of that so far in terms of supply and liquidity?
Yes. Well, I will first of all say it's still work in progress. And to be frank, again, back to the original question you asked about listening. Because when this first came out, we got some pushback. But we dialogued, we spoke, we looked at the issues that seemed to be, that some of the players were uncomfortable with. We gave reassurances, which seemed to calm many of them down. And I think, as I said, it's work in progress, but I see that it is gradually getting to a phase where the sort of contributions that one would expect from that sector will definitely be there.
Thank you, sir. Well, I mean, the governor spoke about collaboration and partnership. He doesn't just say it, he is here with one of his deputy governors. It's a long time I saw a governor go around with any of the deputies in Nigeria. I want to then ask you.
No, I'm fine. Thank you very much. Thank you.
I want to ask you about bank recapitalization. I think before the CBN announced it, people already said this was something that was going to happen. So it wasn't the announcement that surprised people. But the conversation, one part of that conversation that never seemed to go away is the one about retained earnings and how you recognize profit in the sector. When the CBN then says that in recapitalizing, banks will not be allowed to account, use their retained earnings as part of the funds for recapitalization, are you saying that the profitability level declared by the banks and licensed by the CBN is questionable?
First and foremost, let me say, Frank, I would be surprised if you didn't ask this question. In fact, very disappointed. And my simple answer to your question is no. We didn't. We don't. I think it's also important to give a little bit of context. One of my first major outings was late in 2022 at the Chartered Institute of Bankers. And at that time, I didn't signal. I actually said, this is where we're going to go to. We didn't know how much that was work in progress, but I felt it was necessary to tell bankers and the market that this is where we're headed. This was, I think, in October, November. Then, this year, I beg your pardon, we now went out and actually spoke about the issue of the amounts. Now, as far as I can see, the banks had more than enough time to prepare for this. That's one. Two, we also gave them a whole 2 years. Okay, and that's not normal in the Nigerian circumstance when it comes to policy making. Policies come out and they expect you to do it within 6 months, 9 months, or immediately. And we said no. 2 years, take your time. Don't be in any rush. What we're looking to do is build a better and stronger and more resilient banking system. And that is not something we want you to do overnight. You see, it's important to note that the contribution that the banking system has towards our GDP is relatively modest in comparison to our peers. This, we believe, is a means of hopefully beginning to address that issue. And indeed, will open the banks up to different kinds of, wanting to provide different kinds of services to the populace, as opposed to aggregating in one particular area. So that's one I think is very important to say. With respect to retained earnings, quite frankly, as far as we're concerned, it helps to build comparability, okay, because with other items, with retained earnings, easily you can, accounting rules allow you to calculate, put certain things in, and others may take some certain things out, from depreciation to amortization to a whole host of things. So we feel that something that is easily determinable, okay, outside of retained earnings, does help for comparability. We think that is very important. And frankly, for us, we have absolutely no doubt in our minds that we must move to a more transparent system within the banking industry. And this will contribute in no small way to achieving that objective.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I think I have two more questions, and I'll take them very, very quickly. The first question that I would like to ask you is, given the kind of leader we know you are, and you have told us this afternoon you are, there appears now to be a growing pushback against the continued increase in the MPR, which of course impacts the rate at which everyone here in the room borrows from the bank. How do you see the need for a balance between cooling down the economy and also promoting the growth that everyone here has said we need so badly?
Another tough question. Well, look, let me first and foremost make something very clear. Interest rates are not set by the governor of the central bank. Interest rates are set by the Monetary Policy Committee. And thankfully, we have a Monetary Policy Committee comprised of independent-minded thinking people. And these are people who are not given to emotion. What they look at is data. They look at data, and they basically go along with what the data says. The MPC has made it very clear that for them, the major issue is taming inflation. And I've also made it very clear that they will do whatever is necessary to tame inflation. Sadly, very sadly, we have a situation, and we were all there, where a lot of money supply went into the system. We were all there. We all saw ways and means soar to 27 trillion naira. We were there. Is there anybody here that can say that can put up their hand and say they were not there? We saw interventions, 10.5 trillion naira. It has its consequences. It's painful, but it has its consequences. And in a large respect, that's what we are paying for now. However, before I finish on this, because you've raised, let me conclude by saying that one is not, and I can say the MPC is not, oblivious to the fact that ultimately we do want growth. The country does need growth, okay? And two things I will say. One, if these hikes were not done at the time they were done, if you recall, Naira to dollar was almost tipping over. This helped to stabilize things. That's number one. Number two, very importantly, is that it's a timing issue. This is not something that I expect would remain with us forever, okay? Fiscal issues being moderated and the ability to soak up all the excess liquidity that we have in the system and be able to balance things out over a period of time, that's the important thing for the MPC as far as I can see. And I believe that, for example, I can tell you that between February and May of this year, the month-on-month rate of inflation, month-on-month, has halved, has gone down 50%. Okay? So my sense is that, as I said, this is not something that is a one-size-fits-all and you'll expect, to continue like this. To the extent that the right policies are used, and obviously with the results we've seen, the right policies are being used, I believe that in the not too distant future, things will begin to moderate and interest rates will come down.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you. And this is my very last question. It is not all the time that the big masquerade come out to dance. And even you alluded to that earlier. So let me ask you this question. What is your outlook for Nigeria 1 year, 2 years down the road? How do you see things panning out, given the huge amount of data that you see and the people that you talk to?
Well, I think a lot has been said here today, and I recall two things I noted down when my dear friend Catherine was talking about Kintsugi, building back better, and NIA, trust and good intentions. Building back better and trust and good intentions. And of course, we heard the perspective from my dear friend, the former governor of the Central Bank of Kenya, who also has brought his vast experience to where we are today and where he sees the African continent going, in the medium to long term. Look, my sense is that it's important that we continue to tell ourselves the truth. I think it's important we continue to tell ourselves the truth. We as a people, over the years, unfortunately, we've had a lot of opportunities which I believe we've not made the best use of. I think today we need sincerity of purpose and the will to overcome the huge challenges that we have. And they are huge. They're not small. They're huge. But my sense, honestly, is that with continuing the way we are going, and again, we spoke about communication earlier, and I think communication both on the monetary and fiscal side hopefully should continue to improve, because it is so important that people should understand the measures that are being taken to ensure that we get out of the woods, because doing that gives hope. But I don't think we should give ourselves false hope. Let's do the right things. The right things, I'm confident, will take us out of where we are. And then be communicating on a regular basis. Sometimes it's the inability to communicate effectively that may give rise to problems. For example, I just gave you that statistic on how 50%. Yeah, it's halved. I mean, that's a big...
In a short time.
In a relatively short time. So these things, we need to continue to communicate them to douse tensions and to give people hope for the future. Tough times, I believe, if some of the other things that we've spoken about and are constantly spoken about on the press, production of oil and a whole host of other things like that are taken care of, we will certainly get there. One of the things I want to also say, since you asked, as a result, obviously, of the challenges that we have faced, one of the things we've done in the monetary side is we've said, look, diaspora remittances is very key. And we set up a committee. The last time I went to Washington for the World Bank meetings, I invited the IMTOs. And I was so impressed. I was really, really so impressed at the responses I got. People flew in from all over the world to have a meeting and engage with me on this. I was very impressed. And at the end of that, we said, look, based on what we've heard, based on the dialogue we've had, we are going to double the remittance flow within a year. Now, if we're able to do that in a number of other places, we will get to where we want to get to. So I think the future, as far as I can see, is bright.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. He didn't tell us why he was called headmaster, but I must let you know that we both belong to a group we called, and thanks to Catherine, the Thursday group. And he was our leader in the group, and Catherine was our lecturer. We did it mostly by Zoom then, but we're still very, very grateful for the work that you did. Now I understand why, given the affiliation to Nigeria, because I often ask myself, why would this professor be so kind to do so much work on behalf of people thousands of miles away? But you have come closer now. You're no longer in Harvard. You're now very close to us in Cape Town. Thank you very much. And Mr. Governor, I must thank you for the time that you have taken and for your candid answers as well. Thank you so much, Mr. Governor. We indeed, you are working on the behalf of all of us. So it is in our own self-interest to wish you the very best. Thank you, Mr. Governor. Thank you, sir.
Absolutely. Let's put our hands together one last time for these two gentlemen, Mr. Olayemi Cardoso, Governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, and Frank Agbogun, MD, CEO of Business Day. This doesn't happen very often, so thank you for your candid answers. Before we go on to the next portion, we'd like to invite Your Excellency, Deputy Governor, please to kindly join them on stage. And all the other state governors and representatives, please kindly join us on stage, as well as the sponsors of today's event. Please kindly make your way onto the stage. Yes, Deputy Governor of the Central Bank, if you could kindly join us. Kano State, Jigawa State representatives, and all of the sponsors of the ceoforum. They'll have their own. Yeah, this is going to be quite the picture. So let's do the governors first, and then we'll take it one at a time. Don't forget to smile. Thank you very much. If you could please stay on stage, and then could everyone else please kindly join us on the stage as well? Thank you. I don't know how we're going to. A bit more in a straight line. Please smile. All right, thank you very much, Your Excellencies. Please make your way off the stage. Thank you. Thank you all so much for your time. We are coming to the almost end of the event. I hope you are all enjoying yourselves and are also learning a lot. It's not every day that the central bank governor sits down for such a candid conversation. And these are the kinds of conversations that you can only get at the Business Day CEO Forum. All right, so we are getting closer and closer to the end of the day. We're going to be having a wonderful conversation We're going to be having a conversation entitled Governors in Conversation. So we'll need 4 chairs. Yeah, excellent. Thank you. So for Governors in Conversation, if I may invite the representative of Governor Umar Namadi of Jigawa State, the representative of Governor Engineer Abba the representative of Engineer Abba Kabir Yusuf of Kano State, and the Deputy Governor of Lagos State Government, representing Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu of Lagos State. Welcome. And of course, if we could invite our moderator, Olusegun Zacchaeus. Zacchaeus. I love the name. Could we please, our audience members, we know that that was quite exciting, but could you please kindly take a seat? Please kindly take a seat so that we can go forward with this Governors in Conversation. Please take a seat. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Once again, all right, good afternoon, Your Excellencies. Happy to be on this panel with you. This afternoon, we're going to be exploring a number of issues. And if we listen to the context of all the different sessions we have, I think one thing is clear is that we are in a bit of difficult times. It's a times of economic shocks. It's a times in which mega trends are shifting, right? So what I will be exploring with you this afternoon is really around how we are building resilience across our different states, how we are balancing growth with economic development, and how we are helping the vulnerable segment of the economy that are so vulnerable to these shocks that we've described to sort of cope. That will be what my questions will focus on. I'll say thank you and welcome once more. So let's just dive, right into it. And where I'd like to start from, Your Excellency, is to ask a question. And the question is, there's a need to drive internally generated revenue to drive economic growth, within our various states, right? And that need also depends on the fact that you need businesses that are thriving, that will generate the IGR for us to generate revenue. And then that also coupled with the fact that we have the people in the economy that are vulnerable to shocks in the season that we have right now. So my first question, and I'll start from my own state, if you don't mind, which is Lagos, to you, Dr. Amzat, is how is Lagos State navigating what I call this trilogy? Essentially, the need to drive IGRI to create growth, the need to enable the economy within the state, and still preserve, the people that are feeling the effect of economic shocks. How is Lagos State navigating this?
Well, thank you very much so first of all, I must thank everyone for coming. and for this forum that allows us to have this kind of discussion. So for us in Lagos, I think to answer your question, which stands on sort of 3 tripods. The first one is ease of doing business. In fact, about 2 days ago, Lagos State, we normally have what we call the corporate assembly. Governor meets with businesses. So about 2 days ago, somewhere very near here, we had that meeting. So where businesses comes and we discuss the challenges, what do we need to do? So the number one thing for us is how do we make it easier for people to operate? And as you know, there is this organization that is set up at the federal level, PEBEC, which is the Presidential Enabling Business Environment Council. For the Lagos part, I chair, as the Deputy Governor, I chair that. So working with my colleagues in Ministry of Commerce, Economic Planning, Finance, and all. What do we need to do? How do we tweak our policy? So the essence for us is how do we make it easier for businesses to work? The other thing is how do we facilitate the environment for them to work easy? Meaning, how do you make transportation easy? How do you make roads accessible for people? And so on and so forth. So it's a tripod that allows us to say, we want to make it easier for you in terms of policies and approaches for businesses to operate. So a lot of people have spoken about multiple taxation, something that we hear every time. And so, but we've also explained what we are doing in Lagos. Constitutionally, our constitution allows federal, state, and local government to impose taxes. That's the constitution. But we also notice that for a given address, does it make sense for our local government to go to that address and the state government to also go to that address, even though the constitution allows it? So for example, ground rent constitutionally is local government. Neighborhood charge constitutionally is state government. So what we did in Lagos was to combine it and call it land use charge, to say that so we come once. How we distribute it behind the scene will be what we will do as a state. So the first thing for us is ease of doing businesses. As for the vulnerables and the rest, so what we did was to create a ministry that is called Ministry of Wealth Creation and Employment. We also have the Ministry of Women Affairs and Poverty Alleviation. So what we do is to have registries and see how we can, enhance the ability of the nano MSMEs and even the MSMEs, because data has shown that within the first 5 years, most of the MSMEs will die because of sustainability. So the Lagos State Employment Trust Fund, for example, over the past 6 years, has given out close to 25 billion in terms of grant and assisting people with loans. In this case, single-digit loans. But not just that, training people on how do you keep your businesses? How do you manage your books? How do you go through training? How do you source products? And so on and so forth. How do you interact with NAFDAC? How do you interact with Standard Organization of Nigeria? So that they can understand how to run their businesses within the framework of our laws and be able to have access to markets. So these are the type of things that we do to ensure that our businesses thrive. The nano and the MSMEs have access to credit, because part of the biggest challenges is a lot of our people also don't have assets that they can collateralize because some of them don't have documentation. So another aspect is for us to open up documentation for our people, so that people, if you have a land, make it easier for people to process documentation and so on. So that's ease of doing businesses, enhancing our businesses, and helping the citizens to grow.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency. Can we clap for him? I'll go quickly to Engineer Aminu Usman. Just same question. How has been your experience in Jigawa State, navigating revenue generation while enabling business growth within the state, while also still catering, for the underserved, or what you call the bottom of the pyramid? How has it been for you?
Good afternoon. I'm truly delighted to be part of this discussion. Actually, you see, Jigawa State is from the northern part of the country. It borders from the west, Kano State, then from the northwest, Katsina State, from the northeast is Yobe State, and from the south and part of it is Bauchi State. And we also been bordered with international border to Niger. And Jigawa State is in population about 7 million. And we have about 24,200 land area. Part of almost about 60% of the population are youth. So Jigawa State, what the present governor did, he tried to see how we can improve the citizen, more especially the youth in particular. So the ADB, in collaboration with the federal government, introduced 120,000 hectares for the land to target. Their own target is for the wheat cultivation. Jigawa State was targeted for 40,000. And apart from even that, we got from the flour mill that they wanted about 15,000 hectares. So we try to see how we can employ the youth to make clusters so that at least we give them the clusters and give them the yield with the fertilizers, all the input given to the youths. There is already a 50% subsidy, but we can see that they will not be able to cope with it. So the state government take another 70% out of that 50% so that they can be able to cultivate that fertilizers. And Alhamdulillah, they have done it well. And you can see that in some other countries, like Ethiopia, I think they are taking only about 5,000 hectares. But today, during the drying season, we cultivated almost about 55,000 of the wheat. So being of doing that, as you asked, Jigawa State is second of the EOD, end of doing business. We are ranked second in the nation. We have now, Jigawa State have opened a place and make a cluster for the industrial cluster within the state. At present, we have almost about 9 companies that came in trying to start building within the place. And I believe that we too will start generating revenue like Lagos State.
All right, thank you so much, Your Excellency. I'll go quickly to your Honorable Commissioner, and I'll flip the question a bit, right? One of the things we've seen, and we as consultants, we do work in which, with investors, in which we analyze the various states, look at initiatives happening in those states, and advise investors on where to place their investment. And what are the things we are doing within Kano State that you think are initiatives that could potentially attract the capital we need to drive economic growth, within Kano State?
Thank you very much for the question. First of all, I wish to align myself with the past speakers to commend the organizers of the event. I think this is coming at a very good time where we need really good initiatives to take us through the economic challenges we are facing. Secondly, relating to your question, to align with His Excellency, the Deputy Governor of Lagos, we've made and we're still making deliberate efforts since we came on board in terms of breaking down barriers relating to businesses setting up in the state. And that specifically also relates to the PEBEC, which is the Presidential Enabling Business Council. What we've done, especially through an agency we call Can Invest, which is the Kano Investment Promotion Agency, is to have a system-wide view of, the whole regulatory environment, see where the bottlenecks are, sit with businesses from, top businesses, multinationals, to, Kano State being the center for commerce. We have a lot of medium and small scale industries. Sit with them, really listen from them what the key challenges are, but also the realities in terms of the doing business on the ground, and sort of articulate some of the challenges and really push them as a priority in the government, and so much so that His Excellency the Governor has been particularly interested in, championing programs that will help ensure, the regulatory space is opened up, number one, whether it is signing executive orders to, pushing acts to the State House of Assembly to ensure that, again, they directly tie into the increasing the IGR of Kano State. Yes.
Thank you very much for that excellent answer. Let me quickly move on. And one of the things we've seen, the federal government done recently is to sort of create a broad framework for intervention just to support, the broader economy from economic shock. So I wanted to check, because I was having a conversation in Abuja, I think it was yesterday, on how best to drive execution of federal government policies, right? Are states the best instrument to drive those execution? So if yes, how can we have better alignment between federal government policy and state policies? And more importantly, how are we seeing the collaboration between federal government and state to drive execution of critical policy to support Nigerian economy? So let me start with you.
Thank you very much. I think you are hitting the spot that particularly borders subnationals. I would say from my experience, yes, the state structure is definitely the most feasible structure where the federal government can easily ensure that their interventions are impactful across the country. And the reason being that the structure of the country, of course, gives the subnationals the independence to be able to clearly understand and empathize with the people and know where the problems are. More often than not, you find federal interventions coming into the states with unfortunately improper alignment with state government objectives. And what you later find out is that while some programs end up being implemented, at the end of the day, the real impact that they are supposed to have are not really seen and felt. Because the state government's policies as well and our thought processes are as much important in terms of really portraying what the real problems are. And these cuts across various sectors beyond business. It includes transportation, policies, agriculture, and I can relate that to a particular problem in our state relating to transportation. we do have companies that have been awarded federal contracts, for example, to build railway from that cuts across Kano State onto Niger. And then you find these companies coming and, going ahead because of the contracts and going about and executing their projects. But some of these projects have huge impacts on our environment, on the ecosystem, and so on and so forth, and even, the relationship between the people and the environment. And we've been facing problems where, ecological issues of sand mining, for example, and people's farmlands being, degraded and destroyed because of, unfortunately, very impactful federal projects that we know contribute very much to our development. And so is the case also, across health, like I said, agricultural programs and so on. So I will end by saying, yes, I think it is very important to partner with the state, and it is also the most veritable platform to ensure most impactful interventions of the federal government. Thank you.
Yeah. Dr. Hamzat, what's your view and experience on this issue?
Well, thank you very much. So for me, it depends on the policy or the initiative. So for example, on agriculture, federal government doesn't have any land. So, the states have the land, right? So Niger State is, like almost 8% of Nigeria in terms of land size. So Jigawa is doing the wheat now, they have the land. So each state has different competitive advantages. So it cannot be one size fits all. So what the federal government, I think, is doing now is to have a template to say, okay, if you want to go into wheat production, we will support you if you do ABC, which is fine. If you are going into fish production like Lagos, you must meet this, then we will support you. So I think those are the things that we need to do. So for example, if state government brings in things from overseas, our interaction with custom, since it's not for profit, it's for people, therefore we should not be charged the same rate as a company bringing in. So those are the type of interactions that we need. Most federal government policies need to, to be downgraded down to the states. So think of, say, transportation also. So if federal government is buying buses, for who? Is it just for Abuja? Or is it for Lagos? Is it for Kano? Is it for, So the states have the people to serve. And as such, the policies of the federal government must be to assist those states in doing. So for example, if you talk about transportation, for example now, look at Lagos. Our idea is to have a multimodal transportation that allows people to go on ferry, go on buses, and go on rail. And then we have this Cowrie card. 4 million Lagosians now have it, that allows you to use on all these 3 modes of transportation. So we just built new ferries, 15 new ferries built in Lagos. So our expectation will be that the federal government to enhance the capacity of those companies. So give them tax reliefs. You understand? So it's to allow the states to grow in whatever they do, given their competitive advantages. But this idea of Federal Ministry of Agriculture just buying fertilizer, it doesn't work, and it won't work. It's as simple as that. Each state must be able to operate. Now, fertilizer, for example, is regarded as a sort of essential product. In order to move it around, you must get approval of the National Security Advisor, because we know it can be used wrongly. So what needs to be done is give criteria to say, if you are procuring, we will help you procure, you pay this, we bring it, and so on and so forth. So I think those are the way we must work together. But the idea of federal government doing everything hasn't worked, and it won't work.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Your Excellency, can you share your view from Gigawatt's perspective?
Thank you very much. Well, I agree with him, but you know, we are one of the poorest states, actually. Jigawa State is one of the poorest states. We cannot compare ourselves with Lagos State that the IGR that Lagos State is making, there is nowhere that is getting it within among the states. And actually, as I said, you know, His Excellency has almost 12-point agenda. Out of the agendas, infrastructure, education, health, agriculture, ICT, and so on. And out of it, why he mainly focused on agriculture because of the situation of our own state. How do we put our people to have something that will make them a living? And how in future are we going to be generating revenue from the agricultural part? That is why when ADB, African Development Bank, in collaboration with the federal government, introduced this 120,000 hectares, we requested for about 40,000 because we have the vasted land whereby we can do this wheat easily, and we can encourage all our youths to have a cluster, to give them the input. Then after the harvest, then you pay back what you collected. And that's exactly what happened. Then some other companies, like flour mills and other companies, wanted to buy the wheat, and we really have to negotiate in between the people that do the cluster and ourselves. So from our own side, we can see that actually the federal government gave a subsidy of that 50%, and the state government went into that 75% so that at least it will try to alleviate some poverty from our own people. From our own side, I think we and other states, we cannot say no.
Thank you very much. Let me move quickly, and if you listen to our other speakers, one of the things they discuss very importantly is what you call demographic shifts, which is saying that in the next few years, we're going to keep getting younger and younger, have more youth as percentage of population. And the other point Dr. Njoroge made is around how do you create jobs? Where do you create decent jobs? And his hypothesis, point of view is that we can create better decent jobs in services, right? Obviously, there's also manufacturing. So my question is, as you look at the states, right, what are your focus around creating decent jobs, right? And how are you taking this within the context of emerging technology? Because we cannot run away from that. Artificial intelligence and all the other technology that we're seeing, around. And there's also the concern for climate, both opportunities and threats. So if you put all this together, as you move into the future, what are the considerations, what are the focus areas? And this really not has to do with now, as what's the plan next 5 years, what's the state focusing on to build, to create decent jobs while adapting to some of the changes we see in technology landscape. I'll start from you, Your Excellency. Yes, please, guys.
Thank you. Actually, as I said, we opened a cluster, an industrial cluster. And this industrial cluster, in collaboration with Manufacturers Association of Nigeria, MAN, we invite a lot of companies that wanted to invest into Jigawa. So majority of the people that apply, they will do a due diligence into their own company to make sure that that company is okay. Out of those that benefited to that industrial land, as I said, about 9 factories now, they have started building factory there. So we believe by making these industries, one thing is that we'll create more jobs to our own youths. A lot of them will get more jobs there. And in future, we will generate revenue for the state.
Thank you very much. Dr. Amzat, what's your view on this?
Well, I mean, I think for us, it's very clear that, so when we say the GDP of Lagos is bigger than 14 other African countries, that GDP rests with the private sector. So it's not really employment to be created by government. I mean, we build, for example, the biggest rice mill in this part of the world. But the essence really is to empower the paddy producers. Because we know that in Lagos, we don't have enough land to get enough paddy. So if you go to the rice mill, you have silos, 16 of them, each one about 6 floors. So the essence is to store paddy that can allow us to process rice for 9 months. So creating that job is for people that are growers, so that we can get it in. And of course, there are people that work in the factory to produce the rice, bag it, and so on and so forth. And then even the sales. That's why we took it to the commodity market. So the essence we know is that, like Dr. Jengo said, service is very key for us. That's why Lagos State, we worked on establishing the Lagos Financial Center. That's like creating a zone, but for financial services that allows businesses to thrive and rest. So for us, we understand the fact that we must create an environment that allows businesses to flourish. I mentioned earlier the fact that we have the Lagos State, for example, Employment Trust Fund, that has assisted many SMEs to keep growing and to survive. We have an agency that we call LASRIC, Lagos State Research and Innovation Council, that has enhanced a lot of fintechs, all these startups. So we give them grants. So private sector people is headed by a professor, I think is the Vice Chancellor of Lagos State University of Science and Technology now. He used to be the Vice Chancellor of University of Lagos. So, but we have these private sector-led people that listen to their pitches and decide that to say, okay, these 10, we are taking you on. And 2, 3 of them have gotten patents. So now they are creating jobs, people are using initiative, the young people. So that's the environment that we are creating. How do we make sure that young people that have ideas can actually come in and they can be empowered to do their businesses, to work well? So we are creating a place KITE, which is knowledge, innovation, technology, and employment. In Yaba, for example, which would be a hub that allows younger people. You're an architect, you don't have funds to have an office or a shop. You go in with your laptop, you work, and then you move, and you leave. So shared services and so on. So that's what we are trying to create, clusters like that, to make sure that businesses can thrive. So for example, in Imota also, we are creating the largest food hub in this part of the world, in West Africa. What that does for us is it allows us to aggregate what is coming to Lagos. So for example, we can get a heads of cow from Jigawa, of Sokoto, whatever. We interestingly, we actually slaughter 3,000 cows a day in Lagos. And then it's distributed around. So where is that coming from? If there is any diseases, how do we track it? So creating business, so that allows us to store and then to have food security. We can store rice, we can store maize, we can store this. The most important is it has a deal room that allows businesses to operate right there and then. So it's for us to create those type of environment that allow private people to actually run their businesses, grow their businesses, and create jobs of the future.
All right, thank you very much, Your Excellency. I would like to say thank you to all our panelists. It's been a very interesting conversation on the good work we are doing in our various states and how we're getting our states ready for the future. Thank you very much. Can we clap for our panelists?
Thank you very much. 2 deputy governors and 1 commissioner. Deputy Governor Dr. Kadri Obafemi Hamzat of Lagos State, His Excellency Aminu Usman of Jigawa State, and Dr. Abdul Jabbar Garko, representing the Governor of Kano State. Shall we all please rise now for a group photograph? Mr. Frank Aigbogun, please join them on stage. Chimamanda Catherine Dogan, please join them on stage as well. Can we also have the CEO of RAC Center, please join us. The representative of PwC, please join us. Dr. Stella Opotete, please join us as well. The Consul General of the Danish Embassy, please join us. This way, please. Let me take this moment to acknowledge members of the team of the Deputy Governor of Lagos State. We have Mr. Oluyomi Abayomi, who is the Commissioner for Finance, and the Commissioner for Budget, Economic Planning and Budget, Mr. Okwe George. Ladies and gentlemen, please let's all gather back in the hall now for the very final session. I'm the one standing between you and lunch. So all of us at the second half of this auditorium, please come back now. And we're going into the very final session, and it's going to be very short and very quick. Can we all gather back here now? Someone has lost their AirPods, so please, if you've lost your AirPods, kindly come to me. I have it with me here. Thank you.
I remember. Well done, sir.
Ladies and gentlemen, without much ado, we're moving on to a panel session titled Leadership and Partnership, Driving Value in a Changing Economy. To be on the panel, we have the Chairman, West Africa Rendezvous, and Managing Director, Alaros City, Yomi Ademola. Yomi Ademola, please come on stage now. We're also going to have a senior partner, Christian Peterbo, Kilian Kanoba. Kilian Kanoba, please come on stage now. We're also going to have the CEO of Open Access Data Center Limited, Dr. Ayotunde Koka. Dr. Ayotunde Koka, please come on stage now. The last panelist is the CEO of Credit Direct Limited, a member of the FCMB Group, Chukuma Nwanze. You all please take your seats. And the moderator of that panel is a partner and Africa Family Business Leader, PwC, Isiri Agbeyi. Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. All right. Deputy Governor has graciously decided to stay back. He wants to listen to what this A-list panel would like to share, and is asked that we allow him to stay back to listen. So, we can get it started now. Isiri, ready? Mr. Coker. Honorable Commissioners, please take your seats. Consul General, please take your seats. Deputy Governor, Jigawa State, thank you. All right, Isiri, you can go ahead. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, and good day, everyone. This is the last session, but I think it's, oh, are you on the panel as well? I am. Hi. Very well. Okay. So we're going to make this very short, sweet, but also very impactful. I think the main thing to get away from here is take the polls as it happens from the companies that matter in our economy. So we've heard all of the statistics. We've talked about all of the changing trends. We've talked about inflation and how it's affecting our businesses as well. But it's also good to just hear from those who wear the shoes. How does it pinch and how have you thrived in these times? So I guess my first question will go to Yomi, yeah? And basically just tell us about the trends that you're seeing and dealing with in your industry.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for the question. My company, Alaro City, is a joint venture between the Lagos State government and Rendeva, which is the largest private developer of cities and industrial parks in Africa. And what we are seeing in our space, our project is located in the Lekki Free Zone, is that we have had to approach a mindset that, notwithstanding the dynamism of the market, and some of the operational challenges, embraces challenges with opportunities. And so we've done this in Kenya, we've done this in DR Congo, we've done this in Ghana and in Zambia. And we've had exceptional support from the Lagos State government here in the Lekki Free Zone. But we have come across, from a private sector perspective, a number of challenges that have made us adapt our business model. So here for the first time, in addition to the urban planning and the design and development of bulk infrastructure for a city, largest residential developer in the Lekki Free Zone. Given the power challenges, we have also gone into the power business for the first time across our group. We have been licensed to generate and also to distribute power, so we can ensure 24/7 power to our industries and to our residents. We've gone above and beyond that. His Excellency Deputy Governor mentioned the Lagos State Employment Trust Fund. He didn't mention the Security Trust Fund, which we are also a part of. We know that when we are attracting international investors, security is a big question. And so we're very happy to be in Lagos. We're very happy with the security situation. But to give additional comfort, we've had to adapt further. And we are now, we've incorporated and are setting up our own security company for Alaro City. So I think in a phrase, we have seen that there's been a greater need to not just be resilient, but also to be quite adaptable to the opportunities that come with the challenges.
Yeah, and I like the fact that you mentioned adaptability as well, but what also stuck out for me was the obvious partnership, as you say, with Lagos State. And I'll come back to that in a bit. The other thing as well was around housing, you know, and it would just be interesting to understand what kind of innovative ideas are coming through from the powering side, because we see that the cost of power, I don't know, are you in band A or band B or band C?
So personally, in my house, I'm in band A. In Alaro City, fortunately, we have an independent power plant, which has been licensed by NERC. I believe when we renew, we'll be licensed by Lagos State, given the changes to the regulation. And we're powered by compressed gas, which means we're quite competitive. We're looking to transition to pipe gas, which will make us even more competitive.
Okay, great. But Perfect. Oh, wow. There's a round of applause. Okay, so Mr. Tunde Koka, I'd like to hear from you about the trends you're dealing with. One of the key things that Sam Abu spoke to while we were discussing trends was around the fact that we're seeing big demographic changes. We listened to Professor Duggan as well, and seeing all of the changes politically in different political classes is also one to think through. In Nigeria, we call it our jackpot syndrome. And our survey, the Hopes and Fears survey, tells us that with all of these innovative ideas, which he's spoken to, Yomi's spoken to, it's causing CEOs to renovate, to reinvent. But it's also causing a fright syndrome where some of our young ones are exiting. And the root cause probably is because they're scared or unhappy. How are you dealing with your workforce in your industry, and what trend are you seeing there?
Thanks. Good afternoon, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, and it's a great honor to be here. I'd like to speak into all those things you said, perhaps by talking about what we do, and that therefore the impact and what it means for 2050 and the youth and JACPA and so on. So open access data centers, we build data centers across Africa. Open access data centers is owned by a company called WIOC, W-I-O-C-C, that builds connectivity, open access, fiber connectivity with capacity on subsea cables, and so on across the continent. It started by building networks in Southern Africa, some of the undersea cables there, and really diversified into building networks, terrestrial networks across Africa, long distance network in South Africa, and has expanded into Nigeria as well. And it set up Open Access Data Center as a sister company about 5 years ago. Now, I'm based in Lagos. Well, I always say what we do in Africa from the data center's point of view. Now, when you combine, we have this view of converged digital infrastructure, connectivity, and data centers. Research has shown that for every 10% of broadband penetration, you can actually impact economies by about 2.5% GDP growth. In emerging economies. More advanced economies, about 1%, really. Now, if you combine that with data centers, it means that you're now holding the information and the data use. We don't depend on the data that's held in Europe, so on. So, if you put that together, as we build out, we actually have significant impacts in communities, lives and livelihoods across the continent.
Yeah.
And if we're actually going to achieve what we're talking about to 2050, we need to digitize Africa. The new superhighway is digital, it's fiber, and that's what enables a lot of economic growth, employment, and so on. Yeah. Now, the data center economy in Africa is growing. We talk about Africa's population being 18% of global population. The GDP is around about 4% of global GDP. I call that the prosperity gap, right? Now, in Africa, we have installed data centers, only about 1% of installed capacity in the world. That's the digital gap. We need to close that, to close the prosperity gap, and to talk about a lot of the things we need to achieve right through to the 2020 objectives and the goals, right? So there's a lot of build we have to do in Africa. A lot of Africa data is also held in Europe, a lot of the cloud stuff that we have, and so on, that we consume over here. Now, for us, I'll just bring it straight back down to Lagos. We have about 34 data centers in South Africa. Our flagship is here in Lagos. It's near Jakonde in Lekki. This is where the Google Equiano cable lands into. And I believe that in the Africa landscape, Lagos is going to be the key hub of digital infrastructure in Africa. Right now, South Africa has 50% of installed data center capacity. It's a reality. I mean, it just happened to be Lagos and Nigerian as well. But the reality of it is this is how it's going to develop. And I have my thesis for that. You see, Lagos is well served with undersea cable capacity. Equiano landed in Lagos a couple of years ago. And people might remember the cable cuts, and into our data center in Lekki, actually. That lands into our data center in Lekki. We have 5 other undersea cables, and Meta's 2 Africa cable is landing both in Lagos and Akwa Ibom. Okay. Now, the youth, the profile of population in Africa means that the consumptive capacity for digital content and everything is significant. So the latent demand is there. Over 50% of installed capacity right now is in South Africa. But Lagos is starting to really shift in the implementation of digital infrastructure with the fiber Western Telecom fiber docks enabling better connectivity and so on. But there is around about 60 megawatts. People, if it's megawatts, it's power. That's big. Just people who don't know data centers, we won't be able to relate to it. But if you build for every megawatt of data center capacity you build, which is where you host all of this cloud stuff, it costs around about roughly 10 million. It could be either side, but about $10 million. So we have 1.5 megawatt capacity data center in Lagos right now. We're building it out to 24 additional megawatts. So that's around about $250 million of capital investment. There's around about 60 megawatts of data center capacity planned in the next 3 to 4 years. From the next 12 to 18 months, you'll see new data center capacity being introduced here. So we're talking about $600 million of capex to build out. Every you spend, the direct or induced impact on the. So you can therefore imagine, because you see people to design the data center, you've got the builders that build it, and when you're operating, you use diesel and all of those things, right? So it's 50 times. It's a huge impact on the economy. And bringing it back down to what critical infrastructure in Lagos, but also in Africa, to meet the 2050 objectives, it's a problem. It's an issue, but we can't stop it happening because it's a brain game in a way, because we've talked about diaspora and remittances, and so on. What we have to do is to make sure that we set the leadership context that continues to refresh the do and grow, And that's why, Japa had returned. It's been about 16 years now, And the driver, as Catherine said earlier, is actually what you give and what you do and how you grow. That's why with an attitude, I believe that the infrastructure that we're putting in Lagos is world-class. It's going to be a significant world-class hub of digital infrastructure. And how will it grow? Artificial intelligence is taking out all of the capacity in Europe right now. Okay, I call it capacity substitution. Now, and Europe is run out of power, actually. But we've got great data centers in Lagos, high quality, world-class. Well, what's all this African capacity doing?
We're very excited that you're with us. Ma'am, if you could please stand, if you're still here. Thank you so much.
My name is Nikki Alao. I'm the Chief Research Officer at Business Day Intelligence. Business Day Intelligence is a full-service market research and data company. We offer tailored services for strategic planning and decision-making. So helping businesses to make informed decisions that would boost their bottom line and determine the marketing mix. We gather and analyze relevant data through ecosystem immersion, in-depth interviews, focus groups, and some of the other services we provide include consumer insights feasibility studies. So whether you're trying to understand the market size and potential growth and the competitive landscape. In challenging economic times like this, which is the theme of the conference, I think it's crucial. It's paramount for leaders to display resilience, agility, and a digital mindset. And we at Business Day Intelligence provide that support by offering and delivering customized solutions that address those unique needs. So get on the rank of visionary leaders, and we'll help you on that journey to strategic growth.